How we doing? How's it looking out there? Sort of kind of on time today for the first time in quite a bit. Let me adjust some things and we'll get going. It's fine. A little bit less. Cool, 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 cool. Let me quickly do this. Hope everybody's doing well. Look, made it within the 10-minute mark. Slowly but surely improving. I really do sincerely hate wasting people's time. So I appreciate y'all being here. Let me adjust that there. All right, all right. That's hilarious. Man, that is interesting. For whatever reason, I cannot. Uh, that second channel is giving me issues. Hmm. I wonder what it is. I wonder what it is. Damn, that's really frustrating. All right, well, I'll figure that on my own. Appreciate y'all being here. David, I'll check out my Twitter right now. Appreciate that. Yeah, I just saw something. Man, I forget that on Thursdays, Emma Viglin runs the majority report, and it is hilarious. It is hilarious. Man, I'm not gonna be able to fix that right now. Oh well. Really frustrating there. But I can fix this. Let me adjust the chat. Here we go. And what was the other thing? Yeah, we're fine there. Oh, that's what I wanted to do. Just in case. Appreciate people on Twitch as well. Let me make sure that I have the live chat popped out there for Twitch as well. Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. Let's get started then. A little interesting start, I'm not gonna lie. Close this here. Kind of sad. You know, I see myself in this child. um, all right. Yeah, Emma the Wasp, Viglin. Y'all already know. Let me double check that. We're good on. Said you shared something on. This is so sad. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. On Twitter. Let me check this out. So I want to have that. I want to have that at the ready. Yep. All right, let's get started, y'all. Appreciate y'all for being here, letting people come in through. Come on through there. And no, I actually did not get that message, unfortunately. I'm not sure if That's weird. All right, let's get to it. And there is one more thing that I kind of briefly wanted to go over. Make sure we get that there. I doubt it. My airdrop has not been very helpful. All right. Always got to keep the receipts. You know what it is? And I noticed this with a lot of other bigger streamers, whether it's Destiny, Hassan, what have you. Um, what they like to do is they like to make a lot of claims, a lot of claims, and very, very rarely will they actually provide the original content where that claim is coming from. So, because I was, before I started streaming, I would watch a little bit of everything. Most I would hate watch just to learn and understand what other people to my right were saying. And I realized that like they do a great job at presenting people to their audience. They do a great job at portraying others, but never really engaging with the original either quote, comment, or sentiment that was trying to be portrayed. Struggling there. And it was really frustrating because then I would have to go out of my way to look it up. And that's how I would start watching other streamers. By saying, I like, all right, let me see what they're saying about it. I'm gonna get their perspective, their side of the story. Let me see the entirety of that clip if I could find it. And that's why I get really annoyed when people are like, oh, you're taking this out of context. Like, no, I saw the entire video. I'm providing you with the title of everything. I do my best. If I can't give you a link, at the very least, give you enough information to where you could find it yourself if you want to put in that work. Sometimes it is frustrating finding certain stuff, especially when people outright delete their VODs or whatever, or put it behind like a paywall. So I understand the frustration, but I do my best to document as much as I can so that people understand that when I'm attacking their favorite people, when I'm being critical of it, I'm not just a hater. I'm not somebody from the right. I'm not somebody. Also, the big thing now is, or it has been for a while, is, oh, you just want somebody to be perfect, or you want purity testing on the left, this and that. I'm like, nope. I'm picking up a pattern, a behavior repeatedly throughout quite a bit of time, and I'm showing you different moments of this repeated behavior. Mouse Knuckle Sandwich, bro, that traitor Palestinian dude you wouldn't shake hands with. Good for you, bro. Got reporters, yeah, airstrike. You probably talked about it already. No, I didn't outright talk about it because I was struggling to, and still am struggling to understand. And I know this sounds arrogant or whatever, but like my role in it, or like, it's in even speaking to him. You know what I mean? So thank you, Beezer. It's tricky, man. Like this space, I've been doing this for a little bit, just like about a year or two, 2 years, but I really haven't really taken it seriously up until recently. Up until I realized, like, oh, okay, FD was right. There aren't that many brown faces in this place. That's not really the angle that I was approaching to begin with. Initially, it was just my hatred for liberal Zionists and their normalizers. Um, and then once I realized that, I was like, okay, yeah, it's a little different now. And so when I did the Jubilee thing, like I said, I hit up my mentor. He's Palestinian, and so right now I got a lot of mixed emotions, especially because I mentioned he was MIA for a little bit, and where he traveled to, he mentioned that he had relatives that had sent him the Jubilee episode from where he traveled to, and he was excited because he's like, oh, I know so and so, and that meant a lot to me, and he thought I did a good job. But at the same time, as you mentioned, this bastard this comprador has had blood on his hands, has weaponized and it's weird to say, but like pimped out his 33 family members. I'm sure that number has increased that were exterminated by the Zionist entity that he works for. And I know it comes off selfish, and I'm just like kind of struggling to understand because I believe in accountability. I believe in holding yourself to the highest possible standard, especially if you're asking, demanding from others. And so I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it. And yeah, again, Great White didn't shake his hand. Apparently, that was like the most upsetting thing in the comment section for that Jubilee video. Like, all right, whatever. Um, but again, shout out to the Twitch chat. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for that question because it's been on my mind and I didn't know how to bring it up or vocalize it. As we know, um, man, even like Mexican journalists were coming out in support and calling for an end to this genocide, and they have in the past, but especially after this targeting and mass killing of journalists. Um, I don't know how Mexico still remains the most deadliest place for journalists. I don't know if that's just kind of like a something that stuck to them, but I don't see how at this point it's not Palestine. Yeah, it's, especially if we're counting independent journalists and just all the information that we've depended on from and very young people documenting all the atrocities and walking us through the genocide that they're living through. But yeah, I gotta step up on that department for sure. I really do gotta, and you know what? That's something I need to refocus on. So thank you again. Thank you, Mouse Knuckle Sandwich. All right, y'all. Miguel Rodriguez. Speaking of the white left, have you done anything on Ben Burgess? Yeah, a while back, Ben Burgess has me blocked for a bit because he is a neo-nativist, and I bring up this article quite a bit, but it's never too much. No one's right should depend on where their ancestors live. Ben Burgess, and this is absolutely 100% a colonizer, a nativist talking point to normalize the continued occupation of Palestine, to normalize the continued land theft and occupation by Zionists on Palestinian land. So yeah, he's a disgusting individual. Uh, man, I can't say enough bad things about him. It was just the anniversary of the birthday of, or I mean, a birthday is an anniversary, right? That's kind of weird to say, but it was the birthday of the late great white savior saint himself, Michael Brooks. I believe it was yesterday. And I did my best and I accomplished it to not be petty and not say anything disrespectful because at the end of the day, he was the best that the white left had to offer, even though I think he's insanely overrated and quite frankly mediocre. And the fact that his work on paper, his work that will forever be, representing him, is this pamphlet-sized book, which I own, which I read, on the intellectual dark web. That by the time it was published, the intellectual dark web had already ceased to exist. Really does a great job at summarizing what a wasted potential he was by hanging around with people like Sam Cedar, the anti-Zionist, the anti-Zionist, and a Kasparian, who he had a show on Jacobin. Funny enough, so for me, Michael Brooks, the reason why I jokingly call him, the great white savior saint, is because he's so fucking overrated and overhyped. And I have the opportunity to meet him. And he was kind. He was very generous with his time, but he failed my one test for these white leftists. And like I said, you can't claim to oppose 1948 and normalize and accept 1776. It doesn't make any sense there. All right. Although I should probably switch the dates around for that. Miguel, he did. He had a video recently, suddenly talking about how settler colonialism isn't relevant here in the U.S. If you can please find that video or a clip of that, that'd be awesome, because then I could do something with him and North Finkelstein, both demeaning decolonization and demonstrating how both of these individuals came to be anti-Zionist or oppose the Zionist entity or hypercritical of them, but in reality, they're just liberal Zionists. All right, let's get started here. Not with this, please, not with this. And just briefly, I'm going to go over this because I do think this is pretty sad. From The Guardian, it's boring. Gen Z parents don't like reading to their kids, and educators are worried. Man. Yeah, so we have a lot of this. I don't have time, and I don't enjoy reading myself, which, look, for the time thing, I understand. That's part of the program to force, both parental figures to go into the workforce is heavily, my conspiracy theory, my tinfoil hat here is absolutely this: to destroy the family union. And I don't mean that in a conservative way. I mean like in the ability to raise your child comfortably, to educate them yourself, obviously alongside public education, but to be present in your child's life. One of the goals is to isolate us even from our own family members, right? That's what capitalism does. The objective of white supremacy is also to make sure that these kids grow up Americanized and glorifying and loving white atrocious figures, and that they don't learn about their own culture, their own history, in order to fully embrace, the Americanization, the American dream, the American attitude, and the American sentiment towards the rest of the world, including their neighbors. That they're willing to betray their own family members. And we see this in the brown, population, the brown community, where we have first, second generation people, third generation people comfortably voting, Republican, and doing it proudly. And I'm not saying they should be voting Democrat, but they're not even willing to recognize or acknowledge the fear mongering that is done against, brown people, undocumented people. And a lot of them embrace it. They're not even critical of it. And this is because they fully bit into the American pie. But it is sad that people don't enjoy reading. And again, that's what happens when you allow a white supremacist power structure that was not meant for brown and black people. And I don't know the race of this individual, but I'm just speaking for those of us that were not meant to be targeted in a positive way by the state. They're not gonna teach you how to actually read and be analytical and analyze this shit. They're not. That's not the rule. The rule, again, that's why they push this whole thing with the systemized way of testing children. That's really frustrating. Others reported difficulty getting their children to sit still long enough for a full dose of Goodnight Moon or Mother Goose. He's always interrupting. Or, my son just wants to skip all the pages. They noted the monotony of story time when one saying, I love reading with my kids, but they request the same book over and over. Wow. Okay. And look, I'm not a parent, so I'm going to be a little judgmental here, but I've heard parents complain about, like, damn, like I had to see Frozen 110 times, right? And it's like, but you put it on. But you put it on, right? Because it's very hands off. But and that's so heartbreaking, because I'm like, damn, like I don't think I ever had a favorite book growing up. I've never really been somebody to have like to be obsessed about a toy, about a certain book, a certain show, whatever. Like I love different shows and I appreciate all of them, but I've never really been obsessed with one thing, right? I've been obsessed with the medium, especially growing up. I was obsessed with television, but I've never been obsessed with one particular show. Like, so I don't have tattoos of any, I don't know, like anime characters or any cartoons, none of that. Like, I wouldn't mind getting something. That'd be cool. Like, that'd be fun, but to spend money on it, nah. And to get a good quality tattoo, you gotta spend a little bit of money, even if it's something small. I mean, I'd be silly and get something like, I really enjoyed Gravity Falls, even though that wasn't part of my childhood. I still really, really enjoyed the show. But I'm like, to put money down, I'm not doing that. It's not that I'm somebody that is super hyper, critical about tattoos have to have meaning. It's like, no, you just gotta like it. But I'm not gonna spend money on a tattoo that I just like. Or I don't even know how I started talking about that. uh, Others reported difficulty. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Is can you imagine how tragic it must feel for a child? How heartbreaking it is that like they found a book that they love that might be their avenue to really pursue reading, and love sitting down and having those beautiful memories of reading alongside their parental figure, and for their parents to be like, "Oh, fuck that! Like I'm not reading that book again." Again, I'm not a parent, so I can't sympathize fully with that sentiment, that frustration. I'm sure it is annoying, but from the outside looking in, I'm like, you're helping cultivate this pursuit of knowledge and this enjoyment, and creating this feeling and this bonding moment with the act of reading that is beautiful. Um, I've had the misfortune of seeing a lot of like intelligent, young kids get neglected, and neglect comes in very different ways. But one of the things that frustrated me is, some of the smartest, most intuitive children do the annoying, quote unquote, the annoying why, the question, right? And maybe because I'm also annoying, but like I carry that on until the point where I'm like, well, I don't know. And then I switch it on them because I am annoying. Like, why do you think that is? Or why do you think, why would that be a thing? Right? I asked them that. But after like 10 rounds of doing my best effort and honest, because it's important to be honest with children, um, to try and answer their questions to the best of my ability. And, sometimes I would hear like their parents get frustrated, be like, yeah, like stop asking questions, this and that, leave them alone or whatever. When I'm not presenting or demonstrating any levels of frustration at all. In fact, I'm smiling, like I'm enjoying this. And again, because it's not my kid, maybe them even hearing it secondhand or trying to be respectful of me, what have you. But I've seen this where, um, that is shot down, and that's heartbreaking because you're telling them that it's a negative thing, that it's worth being admonished to be curious, to have that wonder. Uh, Parents who struggle to read to their children tend to be younger themselves, according to a recent survey. Let's see, fewer than half of Gen Z parents called reading to their children fun for me. It's almost like it's not for you. I don't think it's like important for you to read fucking entry level books. But now I question whether or not like did their parents read to them like that, to the same way, to where like I don't know. I'm assuming that if you're passing down this moment with your child that you experience with your parent, that it would be some sort of fun. I don't know. Parents in the chat, let me know. Let me know in the comments, parents, how off the mark I am. And almost 1 in 3 saw reading as more of a subject to learn than something to be enjoyed, significantly more than their Gen X counterparts. This mindset undoubtedly trickles down to their kids. The survey also found that only a third of 5 to 10-year-olds frequently read for fun, compared to over half in 2012. This could be because their parents are less likely to read to them before they turn 5. 41% of parents of all ages reported doing so, a steep drop from 64% in 2012. I mean, and then I don't know, I feel like sure, like the iPad generation, all this thing, but it makes me wonder that wouldn't COVID have, forced parents to embrace this, to teach their children to be more patient, more calm, and embrace kind of, sitting down and doing an activity that can at least intellectually stimulate you and wear you out, since you don't have the ability to go out like you normally would, like during summer. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Toribio, Lana, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Always all love to the mods. This is going to be interesting. Reading role models. If parents are reading out loud to their children less, US educators can tell. Russell, who offers courses to teach literacy skills, I might need to take that, to kids as young as 18 months regularly. I've always despised when people are like, my child is 18 months. It's like, I'm pretty sure. Anyhow, all right, whatever. But that's great. That's so young. I love that. Regularly gets inquiries from parents of older children, some as old as 14, who still struggle to crack open a book. There are others, there are other telltale signs. We see children who can sit still and focus for hours on YouTube or Miss Rachel. Hey, come on. Come on now. Let's not take shots at Miss Rachel. Especially when she's being such an amazing advocate for Palestinian children. But when you sit them down with a book, they move, wiggle, or scream and run away. Man. And I'm sure it was always difficult to get a child to do these things. But if you're staring at a not even a blank page, but they might even perceive it as a blank page because it's not moving, because it's not singing to them, it's not saying any trigger words that will stimulate them, their curiosity. It's a stagnant page, an image, right? I can understand and sympathize with these kids to be like, what the fuck is this? Like, get this out of my face, bro. Like, you might as well show them cave painting at this point. And that has, I mean, and I try not to judge parents because I don't have a child. I could barely handle a husky, y'all. And I didn't even want the husky. I had to take him in. um, but you know, just keep the electronics away from the kids as much as possible. You know, the TV is bad enough. As somebody who grew up with a TV like that, I would watch shows I didn't even care for, man. That's how much I love the television. Uh, what was it? After I Love Lucy, there was a show where that producer, um, sorry, that director, shoot, what's his name? From Arrested Development. He also did the voiceover for that show. Oh man, he has reddish hair. Anyway, there's this black and white show where the father was a sheriff, if I'm not mistaken. I just disliked that show. I didn't care about it. And I would just leave it on and watch it and be like, yeah, we sound old as hell, huh? Marley L. It's the damn phones. No, I mean now it's the iPads. Ron Howard, thank you, Lana. Yes. But what was the show called? I think it was named after the main actor. Anywho, Gen Z parents inherited an economy racked by inequity and instability that makes child rearing all the more stressful. The cost of childcare in the US, roughly 11,000 a year on average, has soared since the 90s. It's no wonder they might be too tired or stressed to read to their kids at night, even if they realize it's important to do so. Yes, the Angry Griffith Show. Thank you so much, Sugar Shan. Sugar Shan. Yes. Thank you so much. Horrible show. So freaking boring. That's one propaganda that did not get me. But yeah, I mean, again, going back to what I was saying, like it's part of the goal of the capitalist is eventually to have these kids working back in the well, we don't even have factories for them to work at anymore. So I don't even know how that's gonna go. But absolutely, like what we're seeing with Donald Trump, and we see it with every administration, whether it's so-called a Democratic liberal administration or a conservative Republican one. Although definitely the Republicans do more damage to this. The textbooks that these children are dependent on, I fell victim to this. Like, I loved history and I embraced it fully. And being first generation, again, I was so grateful for the opportunities that I had to at my disposal, which I made use of almost none, if I'm being honest. um with that in mind, because I was so dependent on the textbooks I was given in school, I just completely bought into, the American myth, American exceptionalism, and the, you know, disgusting uh, history, the portrayal of Americans as the heroes. like I fell for that hook, line, and sinker. So I think part of this project absolutely is to have children solely, if not completely uneducated. What they do know is what the state is pushing through. And the reason why I say that, yes, 100% Republicans, conservatives do this to a more drastic rate, it almost doesn't really matter because, from my understanding, Texas being the main, you know, the what was it where like Texas was the state that got the most textbooks. So, you know, the companies that make these book were basically under their thumb. If Texas was going to purchase your books for their schools, like you were screwed out of luck. And again, somebody correct me if I'm misremembering this. And because of that, a lot of these companies were willing to make adjustments to adhere to the conservative nature and teaching of Texas. So the children were already, whether they're in Texas or somewhere in Texas or not, we had books out here in California that were from Texas. You know what I mean? So it's interesting there. I should look that up. Um, what would I even look that up as though? Texas Textbook Company, nation wide, maybe? I don't know. Oh, so this is a myth. Let's find out. I guess maybe not. What the fuck is this? It's a dog org. Texas, like many other states, will operate with an iron triangle standard textbooks and texts. Um, uh, okay, so it looks kind of like an excuse. Despite the heated word by word editing battles among members on the state board, it's not clear how much of the hot blooded ideology reflected in the current standards draft will get translated into test questions or included into a manner of board social conservative. Okay, so this is kind of a broad free enterprise at work. So, what would publishers do with the Black Panthers? Wait, what? What is going on? What are we reading? So what would the publishers do with the Black Panthers? Probably as little as possible, as carefully as possible, said Ron Reed, an Austin-based sales and marketing consultant to publishers, a former textbook company executive, and the founder of a company providing content to publishers. Your first translation of the standards would be to write about the accomplishments of Martin Luther King, the kind of figure textbook publishers love because he causes little, if any, controversy among any ideological stripes, Reed said. Would you then discuss Black Panthers as an example of ineffective dissent? You might choose to find another way to look at it. In most book publishing controversies, is Mother's Milk growing sales? Is Mother's Milk, is that a phrase? Is Mother's Milk? Or am I misreading this? Oh, well, we're going with AI over here. We're going to the docs for it. There are two meanings listed. Okay, but what is it? Or is it just like an original? I don't know. Referring to breast milk, the nourishment fluid produced by mother. Yeah, okay. So it's like part of the essential development growth of the company or of the okay, I gotta focus. I gotta focus, y'all. What are we doing here? This is interesting, and I would love to go back to this at some point, but that's so funny that I got distracted with what was supposed to be an introductory article, a brief one, and we're half an hour in. But I hope y'all find this as important, as significant as I do, especially somebody who I struggle to read because what I assume is dyslexia, and comfortably getting, accepting the fact that like I probably have some degree of ADHD. When like I'm currently going through, I go through these moments of where I really struggle to engage with like with just words on paper, um, or on screen, and I'm struggling with that right now, which always causes a lot of insecurities. Anywho, um, but I embrace comic books because I'm like, at least I'm forcing myself to continue reading, right? And that's not like, I don't think, unless you're sitting down and completely focus on it, I don't think audiobooks should be considered reading, right? Because I do believe that people that have disabilities that require audiobooks, they sit down and listen to them and are fully like engaged with it in the same degree that you would be sitting down reading a book. A lot of people who don't have disabilities that require them to embrace audiobooks do this thing where like, no, audiobooks count as reading. And it's like, okay, well, what are you doing while listening to these audiobooks? And they're distracted. Like they're not fully engaged with the reading. They're distracted. It's goes in and out as sometimes background noise, sometimes they're engaged with it. And I'm like, well, you can't do that with reading necessarily. Because once you get distracted, you've disengaged from the page, from the word. And you have to restart. And sure, you could rewind under a book, but I'm like, come on. I don't. I think it's one, disrespectful to people who, are dependent and require audiobooks because of disabilities, who can actually say no. Like, yes, listening to an audiobook and reading is the same thing for me, right? And that I so grateful that audiobooks have blown up because of that. But I've noticed a lot of people that use it to essentially take a shortcut to say, yeah, I read that. And I'm like, but did you? Because I rarely say that I read a full book. I mainly go through chapters that I need to look into. It's very, very difficult for me to finish a book cover to cover. I treat them like TV shows. Like, I have certain favorite episodes. you know, At the same time, screens are inescapable. Notably, Gen Z parents were the first generation to grow up with them. So they normalize this shit. So to them, their kids having it is normal. To us, older folks, not quite. I don't think we can divorce the role of technology influencing Gen Z parents and their kids with the decline in reading out loud. Screen time is replacing one on one quality interactions between parent and child. Loads of evidence show that excessive screen time can harm a child's cognitive, linguistic, and social emotional growth, and doctors recommend that parents limit non educational screen time for children ages 2 to 5 to about 1 hour per weekday, and 3 on the weekends. Or you try getting a toddler to settle into a story time without giving into their demands to watch Bluey, to watch Bluey. Most parents see the iPad as a necessary evil. Nah, I don't see that. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Y'all could come after me. I'll take it. No, this whole necessary evil thing it's not. Stop. It's. I do think that it's neglect. I do think that that's neglect. You're just excusing it. Like, it kind of reminds me like of how parents excuse, um, like physically punishing their children. You're like, I have to. They just don't. They won't sit down. They don't listen. It's a necessary evil. They got to learn. It's like, no, it's not. I just think it's neglect, and one is physical and the other is psychological. But again, I'm open to being corrected there as a non-parent. America's so-called literacy crisis is well documented. An Atlantic report from last fall found that many elite college students failed to complete English assignments as they never had to read a full book in high school. No, I read a full book in high school. Even okay, I'll share this. Sorry. So in middle school, the school I went to had basically gotten renovated. Apparently, some white dude that went there when it was a white community got rich, and wanted to put his name on the school and put a lot of money into it. Probably just dox myself. Like it matters. And so because of that, now the majority of the school being brown, certain changes were made. For example, was not allowed to take a backpack to middle school at all. Nobody was allowed to carry a backpack, which it sucked. It really did suck. But you normalize that shit. And then, what was I saying? So I remember having this class where the original teacher, she was amazing, amazing, but she had to leave because of George W. Bush, No Child Left Behind. So she had to go back to school and get whatever, like something, right? So she went to go do that, and so we didn't have her for the rest of the year. I believe she came back like 2 years later or something like that. Anyway, her replacement, this I would say poor white dude, but he was such a moron that it's like I can't even be sympathetic to him. Um, he would say like just really rude things like, oh, I tutor children, like Asian children, for college prep courses, and like they give me more respect than you kids give, this and that. I'm like, why are you telling this to like 13-year-olds? Who gives a fuck? Anywho, that class was a nightmare. Like it was rowdy. Uh, Kids doing CC on the side. Uh, shit like that. Somebody went through his backpack, and I guess he was planning to go to the gym afterwards, so they pulled out his underwear. Like it was just ridiculous. Um, People were using the textbooks to like glide on the floor and see how far you could go, gliding through it and like pushing yourself with the desk. It was fun for like about a month. I'm not gonna lie, it was fun for about a month. I got into like a little scrap in that class, and nobody even noticed really because of how chaotic that class was. And mind you, like, anywho, so I think I was very privileged and fortunate in my schooling. I really do. Like, despite all these things. And it got to the point where like I was so over it. And I've always been this grumpy old man to begin with. But I was so over it, I would just sit down and be reading books that I found interesting. And one day he's trying to get the class to like settle in and pay attention to what we're reading, this and that. And I don't even remember why I was sitting up front because I wouldn't engage at all. I had just checked out, and I would just read because I'm like, fuck it, I'm sitting here. And we didn't have smartphones. At least I didn't have a smartphone. And I'm reading something that we weren't supposed to read. I forget what book it was. I don't think it was Hatchet, but it might have been, especially at that age. And this motherfucker slams his hands on my desk and says, like, Carlos, that's not what we're reading right now. and, I, and I look up and I look around. And I'm like, bro, nobody's reading anything. Like, why are you coming after me for reading something right now when nobody else is reading anything? And I've always been a loudmouth. And he looks at me, and everybody kind of just gets quiet. And he's like, but we're trying to. So read what we're reading and what we're trying to read. And I was just like, all right, bro, whatever. All right, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Like, let me know how that goes. I got like what I think is my first like big concussion, if I'm not mistaken, in that class. Because these two dumb motherfuckers were sitting facing the door, and I went to open it, and one of them kicked the door because they think that shit's funny. And the door literally slammed straight into like my eyebrow. I don't know how it didn't bleed, but I was like dazed, like fucking gone. And immediately he was like, "That's it. Like, you're getting suspended. I'm sending you to not me, to the kid that did it." And funny enough, me and that kid were eventually cool. He's the one that I had a little back and forth with. And I'm like half concussed, and I'm like, no, don't get him in trouble. People are gonna think I snitched. Don't do that. Don't do that. And he's like, you didn't snitch. I saw the whole thing. And I was like, you don't understand. I don't want that reputation. So fucking dumb. I'm sorry, y'all. Thank you for putting up with me there. Okay, so where were we? The pandemic wreaked havoc on students' performance in both math and reading, with scores in both subjects dropping to the lowest margin in over 30 years. On TikTok, teachers have taken to posting PSAs urging parents to read to their children with the, with the caption, I bet you can't tell who jeez. I bet you can't tell who was breastfed versus formula fed, but I can tell you who has grown-ups that read to them every night. Yeesh, that's funny. Kids who don't get a head start reading at home often have trouble catching up to those who do, says Donna Duff, an associate professor of speech language pathology. Again, need to hit her up. Books are a really rich source of learning new words, and if kids don't have that experience reading at home, they're likely to come to school knowing less vocabulary, and that makes a big difference in how successful you're going to be throughout school. Yeah, 100% this, but my dyslexia fucking wrecked me, man. Like my spelling has always been atrocious. But yeah, reading has I'm sure if I wasn't encouraged to read at such a young age that that would have been worse. Also, like I went to summer school every fucking year. I went to summer school every year. And it wasn't, I think other than 1 year, it wasn't because of grades. It wa well, I mean, they don't they don't want me in the house. Okay. But kids don't just learn to read at school. Oh, she's okay, I'll read her name. Becky Gansalda, president of the American Association of School Librarians, stresses the importance of parents as reading role models. Reading out loud to children not only helps them learn vocabulary, but it builds emotional intelligence. There it is, such as the ability to empathize and connect. According to Hopper Collins' report, more than 1 in 5 boys aged 0 to 2 are rarely or never read to. Wow. Wow. Okay. According to the Harper Collins report, more than 1 in 5 boys aged 0 to 2 are rarely or never read to. That's heartbreaking. While 44% of girls in that age group are read to every day. Yo, man. And again, this is why I try to make the effort, even in my personal conversations, to address and take serious misandry. This is clearly, boys being neglected specifically, in contrast to girls. And that has such, long-term effects. That's heartbreaking. That is very sad and tragic, especially because I do have a positive relationship with reading despite, my dyslexia and potential ADHD. Mind you, both aren't diagnosed, but just at this age, the ripe age of 31, like I've come to accept a lot of things that I've denied, especially, being brown. Like all that shit that's an excuse. That's an excuse. Don't paint any mind. You're just mentally weak. Just work harder, and don't accept any labels on you that may diminish you or make you uh, think of yourself less than or needing help of others or extra help than the average person might need. Like I remember in community college, like first bringing up my dyslexia, um, and a professor literally said, "Why don't you like get resources so you have more time available to you for example exams or especially when it comes to writing out?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm just being lazy." And I'm just trying to be kinder to myself, and at least at the very least more honest with my limitations. This comes as boys continue to fall behind girls in school. They are more likely to enter kindergarten behind girls, earn lower GPAs, and not graduate high school. Yeah, that's sad, and I do recommend everybody check out the rest of this article. But again, this was only supposed to be something brief, and we're at 50 minutes. Look, if you're new here and you're sick and tired of the same bland unseasoned opinions and so-called analysis from these shallow, materialistic, aesthetically pleasing streamers. If you're just over that, the personas, the characters, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe. If you haven't, leave a comment, tell me how off the mark I am. But yeah, this is deculturation. This is what we do here. We got the second channel up, Deculturation Live. For whatever reason, it is not streaming there right now. I don't know what's going on. Very frustrated. I thought I did everything right. It worked yesterday. So tomorrow I'll probably start the stream earlier and try and figure that out. Which is gonna be hard to do. Because I do have apparently I have plans. So there's that. All right, but I hope you all enjoyed that article. It was kind of like a last minute addition to this lineup, and I really enjoyed it. And looking at the chat, I appreciate the chat over here staying active. Kala 362, comic books are real literature. I discussed them in literary class at uni. They are great, absolutely. But I do think that one, if we're talking about word count, because so much of the page is usually um art. I mean, lettering is art too. I want to disparage that, but you know what I mean. Like the panel versus word ratio, you know what I mean? I mean, anyway. So in that sense, you have to read a lot of comic books to say that you read a book, or the equivalent of an average book, if I'm explaining myself correctly. So that's why I kind of struggle with that. You don't normally hear me call something a graphic novel, even though because I do, think there's a distinction between a graphic novel and a comic book. I think most things are just plain comic books, and then you have your exceptions of, okay, it's a graphic novel because it's a higher level of writing and requires a higher level of reading capability to truly grasp it. Like, it's such a cliche to say, but I'm not gonna be able to pull it out. A Watchmen, it's definitely one of those. It challenges you, right? And it's a reason why Alan Moore can be such a smug, elitist, and quite frankly correct, writer, because it is challenging. Like, I so desperately want to skip over the pirate stories, and but it's so essential to the entirety of the message. But I agree, there are some, yeah, there's some true art in there. Oh, that's smart, Christopher. I like that. I've been trying to be more attentive to RPG games and reading the dialogue just to itch my ADHD brain while still engaging in text. I mean, honestly, we got to take the wins where we can, and really, um, I'm the first one to say, let's not try to pretend that we're like intellectualizing these things. Just be honest with ourselves. But yeah, it's very easy for you just to skip that and continue playing your game. Like, the fact that you're actually engaging with this and respecting the creators of this art, these games, they're artistic endeavors at the end of the day. I do think that they deserve a little bit of respect to creators who kind of truly engage with it. um but yeah, let me just skim over the chat here. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and Walker, that parents don't have the time for this. John P. Gary, haven't seen you in a minute. I hope you're doing well. All these problems were complained about with movies, video games, horror, comics, etc. Yeah, it's true though. It's true, but I think the accessibility is to a degree that we haven't seen before. What are we not buying? I'm sorry. What are we not buying? I'm seeing a lot of, I don't buy that, but like comic books being literature, I think, yeah, you could argue that. iPad is the Xbox 360 or PS3. It's not though. It's not. It really isn't. I'm gonna have to push back on that, um, because at least with the Xbox or the PS3, like said earlier, like, you're kind of forced to engage with it for better or for worse. Donnie, I read books on my phone. am I going to still be more attention deficit? I don't think so. I mean, a page is a page, even if it's on a screen, I think. You know what? You know what's funny? I don't know why it took me like up until recently to realize that I was a latchy kid, but because it was off and on, I didn't realize that it technically was a latchy kid. That made me laugh. Um, because I never saw myself as one. Uh, I don't know why I didn't though. It's not like I don't think it's. I think it for better for worse it garners a lot of self independence or just independence, I guess. The Jamin, I find listening to an audiobook with a PDF helps me keep my attention. Excuse me. Let me try that one more time. I find listening to an audiobook with a PDF helps, yeah, me keep my attention from drifting, since that's what will happen is I'll read something that reminds me of something else. Yes, that's me all the time. And I'll lose my place. 100% that's me. And I used to think that was like a good thing. Like, oh no, you want to make those connections in your brain and remember that. And it's like, well, no, because I'm sitting down for like, let's say an hour, and 35 minutes to 40 minutes of that sit down is me thinking about and essentially daydreaming about something that the text is reminding me of. And then I spend an hour reading. It's difficult. So I feel you there. I don't like the robotic PDF voices. If anybody has a good PDF reader, I would like to do that myself. But I also think it's important to read out loud, especially when I started streaming. I started doing it more on my own. You come off a little weird, not gonna lie, but it helps you with what I struggle with, pronunciation. That's my hardest thing. Um, so that helps me a lot. And you're hearing yourself. You're hearing yourself read. Although it is straining on the voice after a while. Eero, I used to skip class and read books at Barnes and Noble. That's the most badass nerdy shit ever. That's hilarious. Um, man. But for review, I feel like I can't read for shit. And I'm so grateful that y'all put up with my reading. All right, all right. Now we're having RPG conversations in the chat. You nerds. I love it. I really do love it. All right. So another thing that I do want to emphasize on the channel as we're growing and changing things up is I want to make sure that I'm putting on the headlines or the name of these streams, you know, things having to do with Latin America, if you will. So and engage with it more profoundly, as I do feel a sense of responsibility to do that, if I'm especially if I'm seeing it being neglected by other streamers. And by other streamers I mean white streamers. All right. On the Twitch chat real quick, D-Locked, I want to push back on misandry fully as a concept. This is still a feature of patriarchy. Emotional, intelligent men are not what the capital class wants. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I don't. So I think it is a little complicated, and I appreciate you pushing back. That's something like I see a lot of people say they like criticism or to be called out, and they don't. I do because I've one that is what my friend group is like in my personal life. I want people around me that are gonna call out my bullshit, and it makes me a better person. Um, but two, also intellectually, it forces you to really kind of, um, at the very least, communicate your position better, but hopefully to force you to, you know, read up on your position and the counter arguments to it to better understand yourself and why you've arrived to that conclusion or accepted that term or the argument, right? So thank you for that, and always, you know, I'm appreciative of it. So is Miss Andrew? Yeah, I think because overall it is a patriarchal structure, and misandry is a byproduct of patriarchy inherently, right? Because it can't be a byproduct of you know, whatever, somebody educate me, whatever the parallel of patriarchy would be to if women were the ones, you know, that were put above men. because I'm thinking of the word, but I don't feel like it applies in the same way as patriarchy, right? Because patriarchal, and then for women it would, but it wouldn't carry the same notion because it doesn't have the same systemic anyhow. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at. So I agree with what you're saying, and if we're saying the same, if I'm understanding you in saying that, uh, yeah, and I was gonna say matriarchy, Lana, but my thing is like matriarchy, honestly, and this again, who knows, but every time I've seen like a society that is matriarchal, it's been a positive thing. So that's why I kind of wanted to hesitate. Jabari and Guinea, I see y'all. Thank you. So I was thinking of matriarchy, but I wasn't like, I'm not comfortable using it as a parallel to patriarchy. But if we were to, okay, let's just say they are, even though I don't think they are, but let's just say that they are. That would be the only way that misandry wouldn't be a byproduct of patriarchy. But because it isn't, because matriarchy isn't a parallel to patriarchy in reality, then I absolutely agree that that it would require misandry would be by necessity a byproduct of patriarchy, right? So I guess what would be our disagreement here? This is just a feature patriarchy. Emotional intelligent men are not what the capitalist class wants. 100%. So I think we're in agreement. I just think what would be our disagreement here? Because you're pushing back on misandry fully as a concept. No, I mean I think misandry is a thing. It's just enforced by patriarchy. So let me know if we're still in disagreement there, or if I missed your point. My apologies. But thank you for putting that out, D-Locked. Appreciate you. Twitch chat, staying alive out there. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think you're right. Wizzy talks a lot. I also hear people call themselves latchy if they spend a lot of time unsupervised outside as a kid. Is that definition just changed? Yeah, I think that's more of the common definition, and that's kind of why I didn't ever consider myself one. But I think if you're being a little bit more practical with it, I think it literally means like you got, to school and from home on your own. But I don't know what age is appropriate for the cutoff of that. So I'm not sure. Hmm. Maybe I wasn't, depending on the age, the cutoff age. Lana, right? Most IRL matriarchies just have unique social cultural structures. It's not a one-to-one comparison at all. Uh, Matrilineal society is another term. Yeah, that's another one. DFTP. Um, okay, I never heard of the Amazon matriarchy. Appreciate it, Zember. 30 BO. We live in a bro trachearchy. That's hilarious. Because none of us have father figures. Fucking guilty, bro. That's hilarious. Uh Lana, absent neglectful fathers is a cornerstone of white supremacy patriarchy. Absolutely. And even some people, just because they're home doesn't mean they're home, if you know what I mean. All right. President Dina Boluarte signs into law Peru's amnesty bill despite outcry. And look, funny enough, talking about matriarchy, right? Women leaders can also be awful. The amnesty law has faced condemnation from United Nations experts and human rights groups for denying justice to abuse survivors. Man. And I'll be honest, Peru's history is something that I'm very, very uneducated on. So hopefully this can provide us some context here. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has signed into law a controversial piece of legislation that would shield the military, police, and other government-sanctioned forces from prosecution for human rights abuses committed during the country's decade-long internal conflict. This is to be expected, right? The military, the police, but this is where it gets a little, for me, worse. Government-sanctioned forces. is kind of like, all right, like literally anybody on the side of the reactionary powers is going to get a blank slate. So we're talking about militias and perhaps even mobs that were on the side of the government, that had connections to the government, but were what, like off the books. That is frightening. On Wednesday, Bolarte held a signing ceremony at the presidential palace in Lima, where she defended the amnesty law as a means of honoring the sacrifices made by government forces. Fucking A, bro. I mean, these reactionaries, like, at the very least, is that you could have to appreciate is that they're very blunt and upfront about most other celebrations of atrocities and human rights violations. Whereas liberals will do this behind closed doors, or try to like gaslight you to believing that no, it's not quite that. It's just, we have to support our police. And again, sacrifices is such a heavy like frequently used word to create some type of like honor in police work. This is a historic day for our country, she said. It brings justice and honor to those who stood up to terrorism. But human rights groups and international observers have condemned the bill as a violation of international law, not to mention a denial of justice for the thousands of survivors who lived through the conflict. From 1980 to 2000, Peru experienced a bloody conflict that pitted government forces against left-wing rebel groups like the Shining Path. Both sides, however, committed massacres, kidnappings, and assaults on unarmed civilians, with the death toll from the conflict climbing as high as 7,000 people. Up until present, survivors and family members of the deceased have continued to fight for accountability. Now, mind you, the accountability against government forces, because, and you're not gonna hear me make excuses for any groups, even if they claim to be on the left. If you start harming the civilian population here, right? Then I put you into question, and I know from even my limited understanding and knowledge of the history of the Shining Path, they did get into conflict with some indigenous people. So when you don't have indigenous people as part of your vanguard, if you don't have them represented in your movement to the point that you're going into conflict with them, then I started to question your motives. I understand that a lot of what we know of the Shining Path is reactionary propaganda, and I'm not gonna like dive deep heavy into that because I'm not educated enough to have that conversation. What I will say is, from my understanding, the conflict with indigenous people, that is something that you have to really be critical of. All right, here we go. Let's listen to this a little bit.
Luis Enrique Ortiz had a short life. When he was 21, a government-sponsored death squad kidnapped him and 8 other students and a teacher from a university dorm. They were tortured, killed, and their remains disappeared. It was 1992.
It was hard for us to understand how a person could disappear in this way. It was hard for us to process this story.
His younger sister Gisela turned her life into a quest for justice more than 30 years ago. The armed conflict was still ongoing. Maoist insurgents and government forces committed massacres and extrajudicial killings. When the 20-year-old civil war ended in 2000, officials say 69,000 people had died, most of them poor Andean Peruvians. Ortiz says justice was served when the late former president Alberto Fujimori was convicted for human rights violations. But last Wednesday, Congress approved a law granting amnesty to military and police involved in atrocities.
And that's one of the most frustrating things is quite often, especially in so-called liberal democracies, they'll go after figureheads, right? So we see this with the Democratic Party focusing on Donald Trump. We see this with everyone focusing on Benjamin Netanyahu, and they're not concerned about the foot soldiers and holding them accountable. And they're definitely not concerned about the structure itself that enables this to occur. all that gets a pass because you have a boogeyman. You paint somebody as the main villain. They're the problem. If we could only get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, if we could only get rid of Donald Trump, then we'll have democracy once again. Then we'll have peace. That's a fucking lie. These figures are able to commit the atrocities because the system itself allows for them.
Perpetrators over 70 years old may now request to overturn their judicial processes.
I feel helpless. Suddenly you realize no one has taken into account the long struggle and pain of the families. Suddenly they pass a law to forgive those responsible and prevent them from being judged, and you have nowhere to turn.
The most powerful party in Congress, that of Keiko Fujimori, daughter of the former president, sponsored the law.
They've been illegally prosecuted. 30 or 40 years after the events took place, they continue to be tried in trials that never end. It is necessary to put an end to this completely illegal and irregular situation.
What the hell? They're like, oh, too much time has passed. We got to move on. We got to move forward. That's not how that shit works, bro. Like justice, there should never be a time limit on justice, especially if you're carrying it out correctly. Like it's going to take time. It is bureaucratic work. It is frustrating. But I think it's better than lining up motherfuckers so that we know what actually occurred. We know the history and we know the role that every person played and how they should be appropriately punished. Like that is important. That is significant, but that's going to take time. But to just throw up your hands and be like, let's just move on. Let's go. Let's sweep it under the rug is how these things repeat themselves. You have to keep this alive. And 30 years is fucking nothing, but apparently 75 plus years is also nothing when we're talking about Palestine, right? So notice how all these reactionaries, they always want to put a timestamp on something for their own benefit. And it's like, well, how fucking convenient. How convenient for you that now you want to move on. But if things were reversed, you would still be carrying out your atrocities.
Legislators have passed a series of laws approved by President Dina Boluarte, which legal experts say are unconstitutional. This week, Human Rights Watch issued a report saying Congress and the government are working together to undermine judicial independence and the ability to fight and prosecute organized crime. Human rights defenders say the law is an act of vengeance.
Fujimori's party says now that they have complete power, they must implement this policy of destroying the process of justice, coupled with this entire process of degrading democracy in Peru.
Hundreds of cases may go unpunished. Rights groups say they're ready to fight case by case, requesting the courts to not allow the application of the law. Mariana Sanchez, Al Jazeera, Lima.
Heartbreaking. And this is why, like, doing things the right way is just providing these fucking monsters the time and resources to change up the game. To say, well, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Because when they're encouraged or where they need to do things the right way for their own benefit, they'll alter the game for their victory. They're going to win. They're going to get away with this. We need to rid ourselves of these fucking people in power. And it's so frustrating because there's already enough bloodshed, and you're never going to hear me like encouraging or calling for more when I think it's such a fucking LARP thing to do when we're so unorganized. But it is heartbreaking to watch families come together and organize and try to go through, the political process, try to go through the bureaucracy and do everything accordingly just to have justice, just to be reassured that, their family members, their children, their fathers, whoever, that they're able to finally have peace and say, well, I'll never have you back. I will always miss you. I'll always be haunted by losing you. But at the very least, justice has been served. And those perpetrators are paying for their crimes. But even that is too much in this society. An estimated 600 investigations are currently underway, and 156 convictions have been achieved, according to the National Human Rights Coordinator, a coalition of Peruvian human rights organizations. Critics for those ongoing probes could be scuttled under the wide-ranging protections offered by the new amnesty law, which stands to benefit soldiers, police officers, and members of the self-defense committees who face legal proceedings for which no final verdict has been rendered. The legislation also offers humanitarian amnesty for those convicted over the age of 70. Jesus, bro. Let those motherfuckers write it out in jail. That's what I'm saying. I'm not an abolitionist. I'm sorry. Like, if you were mistaken, I'm not an abolitionist. I do think some of these fucking monsters, these reactionaries, should be locked up. Peru, however, falls under the jurisdiction of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, which ordered the country's government to immediately suspend the processing of the law on July 24th. The court ruled against past amnesty laws in Peru in cases of severe human rights violations. It ruled that there can be no sweeping amnesty nor age limits for prosecution. Good. This is the first time I hear about the Intra-American Court of Human Rights. But I'm going to look further into that because that is interesting. That is definitely something that I'm going to do a deep dive on. All right. Oh, shoot. My bad. Where are we at? All right. In 1995, for instance, Peru passed a separate amnesty law that would have prevented the prosecution of security forces for human rights abuses between 1980 and that of the year. But it was greeted with widespread condemnation, including from the United Nations experts, and it was eventually repealed. In the case of the court amnesty law, 9 UN experts issued a joint letter in July condemning its passage as a clear breach of Peru's obligations under international law. But at Wednesday's signing ceremony, President Boluarte reiterated her position that such international criticism was a violation of her country's sovereignty and that she would not adhere to Inter-American Court's decision. And again, this is like the domino effect of the whole Western powers coming together to defend the Zionist genocide of Palestinians. Whether it's Biden or Trump, the fact that they were attempting to intimidate and threaten the international courts in order to protect Benjamin Netanyahu and his regime, this is the consequences of it. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Peru is honoring its defenders and firmly rejecting any internal or external interference. We cannot allow history to be distorted, for perpetrators to pretend to be victims, and for the true defenders of the homeland to be branded as enemies of the nation they swore to protect. And in a lot of ways, and to a different varying degree, because obviously this is more tragic and more bloody, but we're seeing it with Trump in terms of, pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists. Am I upset that they dishonored the American Constitution? No, not at all. It's just upsetting that like white people get to act however the fuck they want and commit any fucking crime they deem appropriate or necessary for patriotism, for the homeland, and they get a clean slate. But we participate in, community protection, and suddenly we're fucking terrorists. Don't forget, California used to be the Wild Wild West with guns as well. And what happened? The Black Panthers started using arms to protect their community, to hold these pigs accountable. And Ronald Reagan himself, with the backing of the NRA, made sure that California has some strict gun laws now. It's annoying, it's frustrating, but it also goes to show who they want to be able to commit, acts of violence, in our case, acts of self-defense against violence. Counterterrorism, the real counterterrorism. Peru's armed forces, however, have been implicated in a wide range of human rights abuses. Just last year, 10 soldiers were convicted of carrying out the systemic rape of indigenous and rural women and girls. And this is what they're going to be pardoning. These are their fucking heroes. And hey, the U.S. Marines are right there beside them. For, whether you want to look at Okinawa, whether you want to look at Mexico, and, all throughout the world. All throughout the world. Drawing from Peru's Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, the human rights group Amnesty International estimates that the country's armed forces and police were responsible for 37% of the death and disappearance that happened during the conflict. They were also credited with carrying out 75% of the reported instances of torture in 83% of sexual violence cases. And these are the people that she's pardoning. These are their heroes. These are always the national heroes for these fucking reactionaries. Francisco Ochoa, a victim's advocate, spoke to Al Jazeera last month about his experiences surviving the 1985 Alcomarca massacre as a 14-year-old teenager. He had been in the cornfields preparing to sow seeds when soldiers survived and rounded up the residents of his small Allende village. I said Allende. Andean village. Despite having no evidence linking the villagers to rebel groups, the soldiers locked many of them in their huts, fired into the structures, and set them ablaze. And this is a frustrating part where, the Holocaust, because it happens to Europeans in Europe, it gets a special place. And then they're like, oh, well, they had gas chambers, they had this and that. Okay. A lot of fascist regimes don't have the infrastructure to build gas chambers. So they do shit like this. And for me, it's equivalent. It's equivalent. A European life is not worth more to me because of the way it was taken out than that of an indigenous life. Just because the manner that it was done is quote unquote more primitive than the mechanical extermination of somebody, when the end result is the same. He had been in the cornfields preparing to sow. Right, okay. Excuse me. As many as 62 people were killed, including Ochoa's mother, 8-year-old brother, and 6-year-old sister. Fucking heartbreaking, man. The trauma of that is just incomprehensible. Wow. The first thing I remember from the day is the smell. Fuck. The first thing I remember from the day is the smell when we arrived. Ochoa now 54. It smelled like smoldering flesh, and there was no one around. When asked how he and other survivors felt about the amnesty law, Ochoa responded, outraged and betrayed. Wow. Completely and utterly disgusting. And again, this is what happens when Democrats, when Republicans protect the Zionist entity's genocide, when so-called international, courts are dismissed, threatened, because they're actually going to hold a European accountable, then the rest of these fucking fascists around the world see that and be like, cool. We're not even going to pretend to respect these laws anymore. We understand that there's no repercussion. The decorum is gone. Man. No, I hear you, association. I hear you. That's definitely something worth a deep dive in terms of reconciliation committees. I think from my limited understanding of a lot of them, they're too lenient. David, I've gotten more and more resentful towards the Dems with their complete dismissal of the immigrant community and how they dehumanize them as just objects I won't ever forget. I mean, just remember Joe Biden was trying to push a border bill, that was essentially going to hand Donald Trump all the power he could ever want, that Lindsey Graham himself was encouraging the Republican Party to vote for. And the only reason it happened because Donald Trump wanted to use the border as one of his, campaign positions. No, I hear you, Darkrai. Or Darcy. My bad. Darcy. You can be an abolitionist and still have leeway for incarceration. It focuses more on victim support than criminal punishment. I hear you, Michael Martinez. I hear you. For me, it's kind of like when when you hear colloquially at least the term abolitionist, then it brings to mind, or people generally understand it as, oh, you want the end of prisons. And because I never want to mislead you into thinking that I'm some like a perfect leftist, which I'm not. I'm very honest about my, certain reactionary biases or conservative leanings. Like that's one of the things I want to make sure that y'all understand, is that like I'm not an abolitionist in the way that is commonly understood. But thank you for that. Uh, thank you for that. You made me remember something. Um, Guy, I don't want to derail things, but if no one but I have no one really to talk about this. I have a really poor understanding of fascism. I hear fascism is here, and I nod, but I don't really have concrete understanding. Um, yeah, like yes, fascism is here because of this and that. So I would recommend reading "Blood in My Eye" by George Jackson. I think he has the best explanation of how the U.S. has always been a fascist state. It's just that we've normalized so much, and we're so controlled, and we've been so accustomed to this cage and the repercussions of stepping out of line. We normalize them to such an extent that we don't perceive it as fascism, especially when the Democratic Party is in control, when liberals are in control. The veneer, the illusion that somehow we have democracy, that somehow we have these freedoms, are better accepted. It's easier to swallow than when we're having, Donald Trump, be so braggadocious about their rabid hatred and xenophobia. That would be the main key difference. It's how it's presented. But and I remember asking Dr. CBS about this. I feel that the US has the most advanced form of fascism. That actually what's going on now, in terms of the way that Donald Trump is operating, is a backwards, rudimentary, very simplistic form of fascism. Right? It's the loud, in-your-face fascism that people, even so-called apolitical people and liberals, will oppose, will get off their couch to push back on. Whereas the fascism that liberals carry out is one that is so accepted and normalized to where, like, well, yeah, kids, well, sure, Joe Biden pulled out, let's say, half the kids from poverty. Half the children are no longer, going to sleep hungry. Thank you, Joe Biden. Right? And we normalize the fact that the other half still remains hungry. And liberals want you to celebrate the fact that, well, half of them got rescued. We're getting there. We're getting there. And it's like, motherfucker, these are children going to sleep hungry. What do you mean? What are you telling me to be patient and vote harder? Organize to vote even harder than before. Like, these are children going to sleep hungry. A system that does not directly address that immediately, and correct that is a system that has to be opposed, and that cannot function for us. It doesn't function for us. Cannot be allowed to continue functioning for the powerful. Lana, thank you so much for that. Let me pin that. You're the best. You're the best. Juan, I didn't see your makes sense that the communists were fighting indigenous communities. MLM is Eurocentric and believes settler colonialism is not a primary contradiction. Wouldn't the SOV indigenous nations be the vanguard? Yeah, I don't know if I misspoke, but I meant to say that, like, if you're leading a leftist revolutionary movement, then yeah, at the very least, in your vanguard should be indigenous people. Guy, you got no excuse now. Alana put you on. Um, it happens, David. We all have the senior moments with the chat. I've done it too. Yeah, no, a lot of a lot of leftist organizations in general do not prioritize indigenous people. Again, I don't want to speak too specific to Peru's situation, because even with my limited understanding or knowledge of that, I'm not saying I can see both sides, but I understand why they came into conflict, if that makes sense. But I want to clarify, I'm not excusing or justifying or saying I see both sides. I'm saying I understand why that occurred. Even if you're being, even in your most charitable understanding of what the Shining Path was doing, I understand why that occurred, and they were in the wrong. DFTP, I would also recommend RB Dutt's Fascism and Social Revolution for a real deep dive into understanding all kinds of fascism, especially liberal social fascism from Marx's perspective. Let me pull that up right now before I forget. But I'm going to pull it up in this one and take it off screen. Oh no. So I'm going to find that in the archives. I'm not going to put that on screen. What were you recommending? Sorry, let me move this. Give me 1 second, y'all, then we'll move on to the next story. But I appreciate y'all sharing information as always. Just gonna search fascism. I see. Lana, the very best. Thank you so much. I want to. Oh no, you retracted it. Was it wrong, or did YouTube pull that from you? Let me know, Lana. All right, let's move forward. Oh, it's in the Marxist archives. Dun, 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 dun. This is like makes me so fucking happy. I really can't tell you how happy it makes me that like I have a chat where DFTP is putting us on to a book that we should all be reading, all should engage with, and Lana, and then somebody else, Lana being the example here, being the one to actually like provide, the source for it. We're all just helping each other learn. Like this is awesome. Fascism and Social Revolution. Dope. A study of economics and politics of the extreme stages of capitalism in decay. That is so fucking cool. And this always takes me back to like reading at school. Technique and Revolution, the end of stabilization, the new economics and politics. What is fascism? Which I think, again, if you're a chapter jumper like me, I would jump to this one almost immediately. Guy, there you go. How fascism came in Italy, how fascism came in Germany. Oh, wow. Okay, this is very specific. How fascism came in Austria. Social democracy and fascism, another one I would jump to. That is so fucking cool. The theory and practices of fascism. That is so fucking dope. Thank you so much to both of you. That is awesome. I'm definitely downloading that later. I feel so fortunate right now. Like it's low key like y'all hitting the feels. Like I get emotional over stupid shit, but that makes me so happy. Blue Eagles, I hear that. Like definitely building something here that I'm fucking grateful for. Deadlock back at Twitch over here. So my pushback is around the misandry, around how misandry is deployed. Maybe it's almost always a reactionary position, just like the men falling women in just like men falling behind women in education is only deployed when white men aren't achieving what they feel entitled to, despite outpacing men since 1914. Oh, I hear you, Deadlock, and I read through some of them. Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading things wrong. Sometimes we just write things out differently than we intend to. But I hear what you're saying, that it absolutely is. Misandry is definitely used by reactionaries to excuse atrocious behavior and their portrayal of women and queer people. But I said before in this channel, like we can't just give up everything to to the reactionaries. Like, we can't do that. We need to make sure, and we need to fight back in, the the political propaganda aspect of linguistics, and not allow them to own the discourse, right? In order we can't allow that, and we need to push back on that. Like, misandry is a real thing. We see how it affects young boys, and it is a byproduct of patriarchy without question. But we can't dismiss it. And I am somebody that I've had conversations behind the scenes about this. Like, I do think that Dr. Tommy Curry's work is essential, especially in the way that young Black children, Black youth, and Black men are villainized. Again, thank you, Lana, so much for providing the link to that, and thank you, the FTP, for bringing up the book. Lana was on top of it. Love it. Archives. Yeah, there you go. Oh, because I said archives? Yeah, I know. Okay, that one's a little bit on purpose to be annoying. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes there's certain words in the English language that just annoy the shit out of me, and I'm like, I'm not gonna respect you. I refuse. All right. Oh, we also have another recommendation here: Fascism and Political Theory, Critical Perspectives on Fascist Ideology. Nice. Let me find that real quick. Cool. I'll keep that one in mind as well. And by in mind, I mean added to the endless PDFs that I have on my computer. Oh, dope. DFTP. Also, Dutz is Indian, so you get a non-white perspective as well. Dope, dope, dope. Awesome. We love that here. So I want to briefly go over this because I think it's kind of like, it highlights the fact that it was never going to stop with Gaza. It was never going to stop with the West Bank. This is manifest destiny through and through. Arab nations fume after Netanyahu says he feels connection to vision of greater Israel. Because it feels a connection or connected. He feels connected to the vision of greater Israel. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, Arab League, and Palestinian Authority issue statements condemning PM's comments slamming mentally steeped in colonial delusions. It's from August 13th. And it's like, it's so frustrating because this is so meaningless. A genocide is occurring in the Gaza Strip, and all these characters are complicit in it. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority. They're all complicit in it. Because right now what they're saying is like, whoa. Settle down. You could commit a genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, but calm down. Hold your horses. And it's like, how the fuck did you ever think this was going to play out? You think we're just going to stop at a genocide against Palestinians in Gaza? Look how they've never stopped taking land in the West Bank, and the Palestinian Authority is complicit in that as well. You think that they're going to stop there? If they can commit a genocide against Palestinians, if they can steal the land from Palestinians and be legitimized by the United States and Western powers, you never thought they were going to come knocking to your fucking door? Why not? Why wouldn't the U.S. support them in that as well? Man, it's pathetic and hilarious how Compradors think they will be the exception. Several Arab countries expressed dismay on Wednesday after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a day earlier that he felt a connection to the vision of the Promised Land and Greater Israel. In an interview with I-24 News aired on Tuesday evening, Netanyahu was asked by network anchor Sharon Gao if he feels a connection to a vision of the biblical Promised Land as depicted in an amulet that Gal had just given him, Netanyahu responded, very much. And again, not just Netanyahu, but the propagandist here. Why is it that you have a country, a so-called nation, where this is like normalized, this is part of the game here? That you have an anchor that is like, here's an amulet of the promised land. How do you feel about it? What is your connection to the promised land? What do you feel about us stealing even more and more land and killing more and more people over it? Gal stressed to him, it is greater Israel. Netanyahu responded, if you ask me, we are here. Paused, and then turned the subject to the role of his father's generation in establishing Israel and his own generation's responsibility to ensure Israel's survival. It's never going to stop, y'all. It's never enough for them. The term, and by them I mean Europeans, whether we're talking about Hitler, whether we're talking about the founding fathers, or whether we're talking about the Zionist leadership. The term Greater Israel refers to Israel's and expanded borders in accordance with biblical or historical descriptions, and has many versions, some of which include parts of today's Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. It was popularized after the Six-Day War on June 1967 to also refer to Israel and the areas it had just conquered: East Jerusalem, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. It is still adopted by some far-right figures in Israel who express a desire to annex or eventually control many of those territories. Jesus, bro. Manifest destiny through and through. Luberstrom, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this is why even liberal Zionism has to be opposed, because if the Zionist entity survives in any capacity, these figures, their children, their grandchildren, their admirers will once again try to implement this. Will try to, bring about the Fourth Reich one way or another. Gal, who was briefly a right-wing member of the Knesset, asked the question after handing Netanyahu what he said was an amulet of a map of the Promised Land, which is not seen on screen. The news anchor has recently begun selling pendants that appeared to feature a map of a relatively maximalist Greater Israel. That is the objective, to start normalizing the next expansion. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, and the Arab League all issue statements censoring Netanyahu's comments. Okay. Express severe disapproval of someone or something, especially in formal statement. Condemn. Huh. Oh, it's censure? So it's not like censoring? Okay. A spokesperson for Israel's foreign ministry did not respond to a request for comment. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over here. Netanyahu's comments and warning that they threaten regional and global stability. Now they're concerned about global and regional stability. Man. Jordan's foreign minister said in a statement that it condemns Netanyahu's remarks, referring to them as dangerous and provocative escalation. They're committing a fucking genocide. And you're worried about escalation because it might affect you. What do you think is going to happen if they're allowed to carry out this genocide fully? Again, that means they're able to do anything and everything. Genocide should be the red line for everyone, but it isn't. We saw how liberals normalized this when the Democratic Party was doing it, whether Sam Cedar, whether Cal Kalinske, Crystal Ball, you name it, TYT. At the end of the day, Hassan Piker, the Vanguard, all these fucking bastards at the end of the day normalize genocide by supporting the Democratic Party. If genocide is not a red line for you, that means you're willing to allow and support anything to occur to anyone, as long as you somehow benefit, even slightly, even more so than the boogeyman that the liberals prop up. And quite literally, I mean, understand, the Pied Piper strategy that the Hillary Clinton campaign pushed gave us Donald Trump. She is just as complicit in Donald Trump's, crimes as Donald Trump himself or anybody in his administration, because she chose that strategy to amplify him, to push him forward, to create that boogeyman. And guess what? The settlers here chose the fucking boogeyman. But even when they don't, even when it's Joe Biden, man, and I'm guilty of it too. I voted for the motherfucker the first time. I fell for it. I'm guilty of it. But I got a problem with it. You should have a problem with it. Should have been the death of the Democratic Party. But these people are fucking spineless genocide normalizers, Zionist enablers. The statement quoted Sufan Quada, a ministry spokesperson, issuing an absolute rejection of these inflammatory statements. He added that such claims and illusions adopted and promoted by extremists in the Israeli government encourages a continuation of cycles of violence and conflict. It's almost like if they're completely pretending to be unaware that a genocide is occurring. Egypt's foreign minister also condemned the remarks, saying Cairo had asked Israel for clarification given the implications of provoking instability and reflecting a rejection of the pursuit of peace in the region, as well as an insistence on escalation. Pursuit of peace. Fucking soulless creatures, man. Soulless fucking creatures. This contradicts the aspiration of regional and international parties that are peace loving and seek to achieve security and stability for all the peoples in the regions, added. These people are fucking shameless. In its own statement, Qatar's foreign minister expressed its condemnation and denunciation of Netanyahu's comments, considering them as extensions of the occupation's approach based on arrogance, fueling crisis and conflict. I mean, that's true though. Noah added that the false Israeli allegations of absurd inflammatory statements will not undermine the legitimate right of Arab nations and peoples, and reiterated Qatar's full support for all efforts aimed at achieving a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in the region. Man, all these fucking bastards have blood in their hands. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry issued a strong condemnation of the comments, as well as a complete rejection of the settlement and expansionist ideas and projects adopted by the Israeli occupation authorities. It also issued a warning to the international community against Israeli occupation continued blatant violations, which threaten security and peace at both the regional and global level. The Arab League statement on Netanyahu's comments called them a blatant violation of the sovereignty of Arab states and an attempt to undermine security and stability in the region. The remarks, it added, reflects expansionist and aggressive intentions that cannot be accepted or tolerated, and also expose a mentality steeped in colonial delusion. Yes, that is a prerequisite to be a Zionist. The issue here is, all right, let's say they start taking you guys out one at a time. And each and every one of you proves to be a coward just like you are now, proves to be complicit in your inaction as you are now. As they carry out a genocide against Palestinians, what happens? What happens when they aim at you next? And they will. If given the opportunity, they will. That means that the person that isn't targeted this time, or the next time I should say, all of you are going to gather here on your little podiums and do the same exact thing and say, oh, this is risking instability. Oh, this is risking instability. Man. It's like they're so obsessed to holding the power that they have and not rocking the boat that they don't realize that sooner or later, the great white colonial shark is going to take a bite out of them and devour them completely. Completely. You have to oppose and fight this fascist settler colonial project head on and completely, because the end result is going to be the same whether you lose or whether you play, passive, whether you're a comprador or not. They won't ever stop. They cannot stop. Uh, Tiki, Tequila, tequila. Ah, I'm so slow. Oh man, I struggle. I struggle. Slow reader. Tequila TV. Most of us fall for one of these comment when we are at the start of our political education. The problem is it wasn't at the beginning of my political education. It literally was guilt from the first Trump administration because I didn't vote for president there. It was Hillary versus Trump. Get the fuck out of here. If you don't think that Hillary was going to do some atrocious things internationally, especially with Gaddafi, uh, with how proud she was of that, you're out of your mind. So I didn't vote for that, but my hope was that Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez would hold the same pressure in terms of these ICE concentration camps under Joe Biden, and due to her popularity, would actually force a positive change on the border. Excuse me. Instead, she stopped pretending to give a fuck, and one of the most reactionary bills was almost passed under Joe Biden. Again, Lindsey Graham was adored that proposal there. So, but it wasn't. It was just naive, desperate hope. Naive, desperate hope. That's what it was. I wish I could hide behind being uneducated at that time, but that's not what it was. All right, let's move forward. Yeah, you're right, Alan. Alan Smithy. The issue is that they're all deeply tied to the U.S. All right, so I did want to go over this briefly about DC police now they're now allowed to notify ICE when they have people in custody. But before that, let me go ahead and grab a snack, quick bathroom break, and then we'll regroup. We're definitely not doing 5 hours anymore. I'm not gonna lie. I need to work on that video that I have planned. Where are we at real quick? Let me check this. How are we doing with the likes, y'all? 54 likes. We got 73 people. If 20 of you could be so kind and hit the like button if you haven't already, I'd appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. And yes, we got super chats turned on. They're there, but we're all struggling, so I don't really push it like that. And what do we play here? What do we play? I guess we'll play this. We'll play a little bit of this. Kind of over that. Or if you haven't seen the conversation I had with it's actually with Black Liberation Media. I'm sure y'all have though. How haven't you? I don't even know what to play right now. I'm not gonna lie to you. Let's just go back. Oh, this is what I'll do. If you haven't listened to this, please check this out. A lot of people that come here, like that's their end goal, is to go back home, and be financially secure. And unfortunately, a lot, they stay stuck here. So there's this whole myth that like, oh, people just want to come here, this and that. I'm like, people are just trying to get financially secure enough to go back to their homes. What they still feel in their heart is their homes. So big congratulations to your parents for achieving that, because that's not easy. And I'm glad that they, that they made it, that they truly made it. Can you just share a little bit about, um, your background in terms of like, um, I always mention how, the Civil War in El Salvador, um, that's not really history. I mean, that might as well be yesterday when we're talking honestly about it. Like the effects are still very much felt today. And do you mind just exploring that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that question. And thank you for your congratulatory remarks about my parents. It's funny because I was just thinking about the American dream, and I never quite thought about it in the way that you explained it, right? I always think that people come here and the majority want to stay here. And that's something that I was actually just having a conversation about. Do you want to stay here or do you want to go back? And I find that 50% of the time people say I never want to go back, right? And then exploring the other 50 who say they do want to go back is interesting, and I think it goes back to this history, right, of why people came here. And so going to our history, we were actually forced to flee the country in 1982. I was born in El Salvador in December of 1981, and 3 months later, we had to leave because my dad was being persecuted by the death squad because he was a student at the National University. And by then, already, one of his best friends had been murdered, disappeared, and then murdered. So it was just getting too close to home. I had an uncle who was a professor at the university at that time, and he warned my dad. He said, "You have to leave because you're on a blacklist." And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but there were blacklists, right, with people that they found were too close to this social justice movement, that became targets of the military governments of the time. So it was that was the cue for us to leave. My dad waited till my mom had me, and then they made the plan to leave. So yeah, we crossed three borders, and made it to the United States in April of 1982. I crossed with a white family, with a gringo family. They crossed me as their daughter. And my parents crossed with the coyote, but they were detained in Tijuana and they were sent back. And they had to convince border patrol officers that they were Mexican so that they weren't sent all the way back to El Salvador. So it was this chaotic experience. I mean, obviously I don't remember, but the stories, it just like, it still gives me goosebumps, right? That at any moment I could have been lost and have not reconnected with them, right? And that was the reality of so many families during that time. And so when my parents made the decision to come to the United States, it was a forced decision. It was one that really pained them because they never planned to come to the United States. My dad's siblings were all here already, but my mom's whole family was still in El Salvador. And my dad never imagined even coming to the United States. So for them, living here, what has now been more years here than in El Salvador, has always been very heavy, and they always said they wanted to go back. And when the time came, which was a couple years ago, I asked my mom, I'm like, "Are you sure you want to go back because of everything that's happening with Nayib Bukele, under Nayib Bukele?" And her answer to me, and this is why I think she's the most badass and amazing woman that I know, she said, "Carla, they already kept us out once. I'm not going to let them do that to us again."
Wow.
And so they're back home, and she's just an impressive person because she continues to do her own kind of organizing, helping, the elderly in our community, and just really making her voice heard. And I'm really proud of her. My dad has never been able to organize in that way because he still lives in a state of fear.
Mm.
And that's the reality in my house, and in so many households. I've been learning so much from colleagues in academia, in organizing spaces, that their families live under these same conditions. And And so I think, you know, Nayib Bukele speaks of moving on from this war period, from the civil war period, that it's time to turn the page of the civil war. But the reality is that how can we turn the page when we haven't even healed from that moment? You know, when so many.
I mean, again, the parallel sometimes the way that these things align, it's funny at times. What were we just going over with Peru? What were we just going over with Peru? Y'all check that out when you have the chance. That interview, I'm very fortunate for Carla to jump on. It only has like 374 views. So yeah, that information that she provides is so critical. It's about an hour and a half, the interview, but I'm really happy with it. I was super nervous for it because I knew that she had a lot of important information to share. And just the fact that she was able to paint such a vivid picture of Bukele and who he was even before coming to power, it kind of gave me chills, the parallels with him and Obama, I'm not going to lie. All right. Thank you all for being patient with me. I like devoured a protein bar. Okay. Yeah, no, AOC got me. Yeah. She definitely did. I was like, man, it was a very jaded, hope, I guess, in the sense of like if she were to do that performative act during the Biden administration, and I understood that's performative, I'm like, that might be enough. That might be enough. If she's willing to perform like that during a Democrat's, stay in office, that might be enough. But she didn't. Hell, she didn't even show up to some of the protests that the rest of the quote unquote squad were doing against Joe Biden. And Benjamin Netanyahu. Yipper, how we doing? So, do we want to listen to this or read through it? Oh, there's not much to read, I guess. Breaking: DC police chief issues new executive order allowing police to notify ICE about subjects not in custody, including during traffic stops, and to help ICE in transportation and detain suspects. Let's read this here. How's that look for y'all? Cool. Maybe a little bit more. Awesome. The purpose of this, Scott, appreciate you so much for the super chat. The message is loading. I don't know if you typed that out or he got a little crazy on there, but I appreciate it so much. If you didn't mean to put that, just go ahead and retype it in the chat and I'll read that out. Thank you so much. Thank y'all for supporting the channel in any way that you can. Again, believe me, I know we're all struggling here. I don't even feel comfortable getting into the details of some of the things I get up to. But thank you, Scott. That helps a lot. It really does. The purpose of this executive order is to amend Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, procedures regarding cooperation with federal immigration enforcement agencies. Effective immediately, members may assist federal immigration and enforcement agencies with the following: sharing information about persons not in MPD custody during traffic stops, for example. 2, providing transportation for federal immigration agency employees and detained subjects. B, pursuant to GoPer 20126.26 Code of Conduct, members shall not make any inquiry through any database solely for the purpose of inquiring about an individual's immigration status. Members shall not make inquiries into any person's immigration status for the purpose of determining whether they have violated the civil immigration laws or for the purpose of enforcing civil immigration laws. Members shall not arrest individuals based solely on federal immigration warrants or detainers as long as there is no additional criminal warrant or underlying offense for which the individual is subject to arrest. Members receiving a hit for federal immigration and warrant or a federal immigration or warrant. What am I reading? Sorry. Members receiving a hit for a federal immigration warrant or detainer in NCIC shall contact the teletype unit person to go PCA 702.01 arrest warrant. D. Pursuant to DC Official Code 24-211.07, prohibition on cooperation with federal immigration agencies, members shall not provide a federal immigration enforcement agency for an individual. Provide to a federal provide to a federal immigration enforcement agency for an individual in MPD custody their date and time of release, location, address, personal identification information, medical information, photograph, or criminal case information. 2. Permit persons in MPD custody to be questioned by federal immigration enforcement agency employees. 3. Hold an individual in MPD custody after that individual would have been otherwise released at the request of a federal immigration enforcement agency. Okay, and I'm glad that I read through this because it does detail some of the quote unquote limitations that they will be restricted to. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's basically saying like, if we catch them, we're not inclined to reach out to you. But if we gotta let them go, we'll give you a heads up. We'll give you a heads up. Now tell me if I'm misreading that, because that's the way that I see it. Tell me if I'm misreading that. Because the second half here. So as long as they're not, that's the key thing here. As long as they're not in PD custody, then they can do all this. But if they are, that's when they're restricted in their contact with ICE. Man. At that point, it's literally saying like, yo, just take me in instead. That is wild. That is absolutely wild. Where are we at here, y'all? We're about the 2-hour mark. And remind me what let me see something real quick. That is crazy. That is wild. I'll try not to use the word crazy too much, but appreciate it. Mother Dragons. The Jamin, real quick. Yipper, we got to troll somebody from BLM like Scott. You know what? I totally did miss that. I totally did miss that because I was like, y'all are can be wild sometimes, right? And I love that and I appreciate it. And I do want that in the chat. So I was like, oh, is it different from like, is a super chat different from a regular chat to where maybe it'll take extra time? YouTube will take a little extra time to process whether or not it violated something. But that's hilarious that Scott literally took their time to like add the brackets and type that out. And then Mother of Dragons said that was a mistake. Feel free to DM me on Twitter or Instagram, and then I'll try and find out how to refund people because that's so generous, and thank you so much. Appreciate it. Wow. Okay, let's get back to it. So I almost completely forgot about the main story I want to go over, which was about Zohran. So we'll do that there. Aaron, Appreciate you so much. Hey man, enjoying the stream. I have a question. Have you read Bitter Fruit, the book about Guatemalan coup? No, but I do love that cover. It has that's the one with the like the US, it looks like, well, US soldiers, but it's yellow, it's a yellow cover, huh? Yeah, it's the yellow cover. Thank you so much, Aaron, for that. Super chat, appreciate y'all. I like everything there. Yeah, no, this has been, let me tell you, this has been on my reading list for so long. For so long. But it just never finally sat down to read it. I might have again flipped through a chapter or two for like a reference. But no, if you don't mind, Aaron, again, thank you so much for the super chat. How do I word this? Because I am a chapter guy. I'm a chapter guy. I have to admit this. This is my weakness. Is I'm a chapter guy. What chapter of this would you recommend I jump into, or do you think it's one of those books where like, no, you got to do cover to cover, which certain books have a through line that is essential. For example, I'm always talking about American Holocaust. Like it's so vital for you to read that from cover to cover because of the linear storytelling of colonization. And Lana, like always, coming through. I love this. I appreciate y'all so much, so much. Whether it's financial support like the super chats, whether it's just communicating in the chat, whether it's hitting the like, I appreciate y'all and the support. And again, Lana bringing us the. Oh, and this is a different cover. Okay, I like this cover too, though. Not gonna lie, I'm big on covers. I do judge books by their covers, but I do love this because it almost looks like a military kind of report, like a manual. So thank you, Lana, so much for providing us with the free legal alternatives that we all love to see. All right, I'm definitely gonna have to double down on that Patreon so we can start reading some stuff. Because I don't only want to read like reactionary like propaganda. That's gonna melt my brain more. But that's thank you so much for that. No, I haven't though. Bitter Fruit has definitely been in my bookshelf for quite a bit of time. But let me know. Chips for Carlos. I manifesto, thank you so much. And I will tell you this, and you might be referring to chips for like shipping in or even like poker chips or something, but I've been craving some how do y'all say it? Like ruffles? We always call them rufles. Rufles, the cheese ones. They're not big on cheese chips, but those with some tapatio, unmatched. Or only with let's see. Ruffled. Yeah, these. So it is rufles because it's queso. It must be. So these with tapatio, the only thing that gets like that is tied with them is the lemon lays. Lemon lays with tapatio. Lemon lays with tapatio. And I will say this. If you haven't had these chips, uh these so underrated and so good. They're like Doritos, but like way better. Rancheritos. So good. I haven't had all the alternative flavors down here. Salsa negra, I haven't had that. Um, but my mouth is watering. These, so good. So good. I think they're like the proto Takis if they weren't wrapped up into like tacos. But I've been avoiding chips for a little bit because it's difficult. Chips and soda I've been trying to avoid, but I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's not easy. It's difficult. It's very, very, very difficult. All right. So we're gonna jump ahead over here to this. Even the black and white thing makes it's so like it's so pandering. I'm trying not to use the word cringe, but it's so pandering, I think. Scott, book cover designers love that you actually judge a book by its cover. I think it's so important. I think it's so important to capture the eye like that. Covers are important. Yeah, for sure. Um, Taylor Lane, Bitterfruit is a great read. I had a semester thesis on it for a globalization in Latin America class. Oh, that is so cool. Taylor, if you still have, and I love asking people for this, and I know it's super weird. Um, but if you still have your oh, it literally just slipped my mind. I'm thinking of agenda. It's not agenda. It's not a course. Um, course content. What is the word I'm looking for? Wow, I just the rundown of what the class is gonna go through. What is what is going on with me? um, man, something with an A. Am I tripping out? A man, I really do need to eat, huh? I keep thinking course agenda, but I don't know. That's not it. A syllabus. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Sky. It wasn't even an A. Curriculum was, yeah, there you go. Yeah, the syllabus was the one I was thinking about. Wow, that's so funny. I'm like, why is it an A? Yeah, Taylor, if you still have that, if you don't mind, posting that somewhere, sharing it, that'd be so cool. And you can obviously edit out any private information, or you can just give us like the books that you went through. How about that? Is that easier? My bad, my bad. I'm asking too much. I apologize, Taylor. That is so cool. If there's any any other interesting book or article that you read, please share it. But yeah, sorry, I was asking way too much. I was way too much. If there is there any other thing from that course that you recommend, be more than happy to hear and look it up. But yeah, I'm glad people resonate with the ruthless. Uh, but yeah, with Tapatio, had to have a Tapatio. You, if you want a little bit lighter, if you don't want to get overwhelmed, Valentina is also an option. Um, I've also seen people use that. What is that perico salsa that has a perico in the cover? That's mainly used for like seafood, like for mariscos and oysters. That one's a little bit thicker and not as spicy, but has a smokier flavor to it. I'm trying to cut right now, and I had an Oreo uh kicksters last night. Jamin, you're cutting for just regular like just seasonal cut, or you're trying to scrap? What's going on? Yep, right. Don't get queso, just cheddar, made with real cheese. uh, Doritos heat wave, but actually spicy. I mean, I don't think rancheritos are spicy, but they're really good. I manifesto we don't have rancheritos. Yeah, they're hard to find. Not gonna lie, if you're not by the by the border over here. Chips and fries are my weakness. Okay, can I say something? And I'm so biased when I say this. I don't agree with the slander towards In-N-Out fries. I think In-N-Out fries, maybe this isn't me. I like my fries to taste like fucking potato. I really do. I really do. If I ever go to Chick-fil-A, I always ask for no salt on fries also. Like that's another thing too. Like they do such a, I don't know, man. But I like my fries to taste like fries. Um, you know who used to have good fries? I haven't gone there in a minute. The Habit. If you have a Habit, they have good fries also. David Barnes, thank you, Carlos, for your coverage on organizations. I found some local ones in my city. I'm gonna check out. There's one that organizes towards police reform and direct action. That's dope. That's really cool. That's important. People like because I have funny enough a tocayo that is on a police oversight committee, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to. Anywho, uh, super cool dude, very interesting. Both him and his partner are very politically engaged. Sweetest people you could meet. Very kind. I don't have enough good things to say about this individual. I just wish that we were closer. It would literally be my only critique because I feel like I can learn so much from him. Um, I know it might seem like such a liberal thing to do, and I think for those of us like on the left, that is our first inclination of being like, oh, you're in a committee, a police committee, oversight committee. Wow, you're just like helping, their PR strategy or whatever for the police. And I'm like, you do understand that one that is vital for we're gonna need police. we're gonna need police. I'm sorry, but we're gonna need police. And so to have a group of people that are engaged with the dirty work and the weaselness of the police as we know them today, those that are here to protect capital and property, not people, not our rights, right? Not here to serve, but here to oppress. I feel like they're going to be providing an essential role. The people in these oversight committees, when we're actually having a police force that is representative of the people and held accountable to the people. Now that might be naive of me, but I really do see that you need some experience with the bureaucratic process to some degree in order to contribute in a better society. Tell me if I'm wrong though. Yipper, not everyone should be smoking. I don't smoke anymore. We get randomly drug tested, you know what I mean? Yeah, that'd be awesome, Taylor. Appreciate that so much. Chaman, I miss snacks so much. Yeah, those cuts are tough. El pato and cream cheese is a great dip. I've never heard of that. Where's that from, Roman? Did I miss anything? Not much. The Jamin gelato. No, wait. Okay. If the thing is Tam Tam, no salt on fries is crazy. It is crazy. But some people are so heavy-handed. Their pour is too much, and I'd just rather not have it than have an overwhelming amount of salt. Yeah, soda is a really hard thing to kick. I think like for about a year or two, I was sober from alcohol, but my soda consumption went up. Funny enough, I can't tell you which is worse. I mean, soda's worse. Alcohol is probably one of the worst things you could put in your body, unfortunately. All right, so we're gonna go over this article and then we'll wrap up. I'm trying to really hard not to do the 5 hours anymore, y'all, but I appreciate, man, just the interaction and all the support. Oh, we got a podcast recommendation. Empire City. Police are not what we need because they're meant to be a standing army, and that's what we don't need. But community policing folk like Atlantis 311 are fine. Dope. Isn't alcohol just sugar? Yipper, when you put it like that, Lana, my friend quit drinking. He started eating a tub of ice cream every night. It's crazy. Your body craves the sugar. Yep. 100%. 100%. The only time where I haven't felt guilty craving alcohol is when I used to run up some I was gonna say it in Spanish, but like some hills that we have around here. You drive up a little bit, and huh, I was driving up. I drove to some hills and running them, especially during summer, and you sweat so much, and it's so brutal on the body. And I love it. Um, that like one time I was running down, and I was like, I cannot express to you how my body was aching for a cold beer. And I'm not a big beer dude. I'm not a beer drinker. I'll drink it, I'll have a good time, but I prefer, if I'm being honest, vodka. But my body was like, you need a beer like immediately. That was bad. That was a real tough one. I've always been really, really bad at not just my time management, but being like, oh, it's not that hot to run outside. And then you start like running and sweating and you're just burning entirely. That's hilarious, Roman. My dad came up with the dip. By the way, like, you're bragging about like family recipes out here. I love it. I love it. Yep. Carbo loading, like Michael Scott himself. All right. In the days after it became clear Zohran Mamdani had won New York City's June mayoral primary, much of the Democratic establishment began to panic. And we've seen how even Booker to this day, as well as other major prominent Democrats, are not willing to endorse him. Which is like, what are you doing? Like, he won the Democratic primary. Like, endorse him. Like, what is going on? And I'm not even like a Mamdani like fan like that. I was just kind of, this is ridiculous. This is embarrassing. And again, why should anybody on the left support the Democratic Party? And why should we embrace vote blue no matter who when their own political figures are unwilling to do something as easy as endorse the Democratic primary winner? That's how much they hate any slight hints of moving towards the left. All right. Former President Barack Obama, the last Democrat to captivate the party's base, got on the phone. In a lengthy call in June, Mr. Obama congratulated Mr. Mamdani, offered him advice about governing, and discussed the importance of giving people hope in a dark time. A dark time that he helped to create is hilarious, according to people with knowledge of the conversation. Others in Mr. Obama's orbit have also shown a keen interest in Mr. Mamdani and his campaign. John Favreau, who served as Mr. Obama's speechwriter, and Dan Piper, a former senior advisor, have been in communications with the Democratic strategist Morris Katz, among Mr. Mamdani's closest aides. Man, that is not a good sign when they're coordinating like that to that degree. I mean, it's great for the Democratic Party. It's not a great sign for any hope of it moving to the left. David Axelrod, who served as Mr. Obama's, why Mr. Obama's over and over and over again? I would literally rather read former president than Mr. Obama. I don't know why. David Axelrod, who served as Mr. Obama's chief campaign strategist and senior advisor, was also curious last month. He stopped by Mr. Mamdani's campaign headquarters, then in the Flatiron neighborhood of Manhattan, to meet the candidate and his staff and see things for himself. I've never actually even heard of this. So it's named after an iron that was heated extremely and used for pressing clothes. So I wonder if that neighborhood. Oh, Flatiron. Oh my gosh. Flatiron. Bro, why do y'all listen to me? I thought it was, I mean, you tell me it's in Manhattan, I'm assuming it's some Italian or, something like that. Flatiron neighborhood. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I'm so glad I looked that up. What I found when I went over there to that office was a familiar spirit that I hadn't seen in a while of just determined, upbeat idealism. Mr. Bro, what? Hold on. What I found when I went over there to that office was a familiar spirit that I hadn't seen in a while of just determined, upbeat idealism. Mr. Obama was never an idealist. He was an opportunist through and through. So when did Mr. Axelrod see this? Previously. Wow. You may not agree with every answer he's given or every idea he has, but he's certainly asking the right questions, which is, how do we make the country work for working people? Wow. These people are like, they think that we have the memory of a goldfish. Like, if we don't know what they fucking did during Obama's fucking administration, how they help, I think, give the final death blow to the so-called middle class. Man. All right. He said Mr. Mamdani's ability to inspire young Americans who feel economic uncertainty acutely was critical and something the party at large needed to reckon with. Mr. Axelrod was introduced to Mr. Mamdani by Patrick Gasper, another Obama insider. Great, bro. More Obama insiders. Well, that's exactly what a progressive candidate needs. Mr. Gasper Mr. Obama's 2008 national political director and later the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. Bro, gosh. With what Obama did with AFRICOM, that is wild. And I've seen some conspiracy theories, not gonna lie, about Mamdani's father in connection to the CIA and AFRICOM. That again, I'm not gonna get into because we can't know these things, right? But I have seen it, and if you're like me, you like a little bit of tinfoil hat, you're gonna if you embrace your loose change days, you read into that stuff. But I don't like to platform it or because it's unsubstantiated. Has been serving as an informal advisor to Mamdani. That's great. The interest from the closely guarded world of Mr. Obama and those around him is the clearest sign yet that Mr. Mamdani is likely to be embraced by the Democratic mainstream, whether the party's leaders and donors like it or not. No, what they're doing is they're training him, they're pruning him, they're conditioning, grooming him, however you want to put it, to play fucking ball. You want to be as successful as you can be? This is how you do it. You want to be loved by the masses while still serving fucking empire? This is how you do it. You want to be the brown Obama? This is how you do it. That's what they're training him to do. So that then the donor class, then the capitalists, then the elites, then his fucking peers can fully embrace him. Now, I think that he's going to serve in the role that Alejandro Ocasio-Cortez serves, to where, he's a little too radical. We don't quite like him. But he's still going to vote along party line, and he's still going to be a reliable Democratic politician, a careerist at the end of the day. He's going to serve that role that AOC does, where AOC can brag about, I said genocide. Yeah, but not before getting the green light from Genocide Joe himself. So I feel like they're grooming him right now and training him. I don't even want to say the word grooming in that context, because I feel like Mamdani is more than willing. All right. I do think this was his objective. The interest from the closely guarded role of Obama and those around him is a clear sign yet that Mr. Mamdani is likely to be embraced by the Democratic mainstream, whether the party's leaders and donors like it or not. It comes at a time of dueling visions among voters, Democratic politicians, and donors over the future of the party. And again, there shouldn't be a future of the Democratic Party. They are complicit in the genocide of Palestinians, and I'll continue repeating this. If it wasn't for liberal commentators who went out of their way, so-called independent media that went out of their way to normalize the genocide of the Democratic Party, I'm not saying that Kyle Kalinske, Crystal Ball, Sam Cedar, Hassan Piker, I'm not saying that all these figures, TYT included, saying we're done with the Democratic Party, we oppose genocide no matter who does it. I'm not saying that would have brought the end of the Democratic Party, but it definitely would have helped push that forward. It definitely would have helped push that forward, and it's necessary. It's necessary because at this point, for me, this means that a Democratic president can do anything, can commit any atrocity, and these people will continue to support the Democratic Party. So this is why I'm saying that we have to view liberals the same way that we view fascists, as our enemies. Because if you normalize a genocide, you'll normalize anything. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it's because it's the one thing that I want everyone to understand. They have no red line. They will watch you die. They will watch you burn to death. They will go and turn out for the Democratic Party time and time again, no matter what they do. Some key figures within the Democratic establishment have reacted, at least publicly, to Mr. Mamdani with a sense of suspicion or even alarm. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, has yet to endorse a Democratic nominee, even though Brooklyn, which he represents, voted for Mr. Mamdani over former Governor Andrew Cuomo by nearly 20-point margin. They're telling him, you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to fucking file those fucking teeth down. Senator Kristen Gillibrand, also of New York, said falsely in a radio interview with YNYC in June that Mr. Mamdani had made a reference to global jihad. Look, I'm not covering here for Gillibrand over here. That is a wild thing to say, but a reactionary, a conservative, a centrist, a Zionist hears global jihad when they hear globalized intifada. You know, so it is a wild stretch, but it's not too wild for these people. So that's why there was no need for them to go that far. They would have heard the same fucking thing. Miss Gillibrand later apologized for those remarks. As the Times reported, the poster Mark Penn even met with President Trump to brief him on posts showing that Mr. Cuomo could be competitive in a one-on-one race with Mr. Mamdani. One of Mr. Penn's firms has worked for a pro-Cuomo super PAC. It seems very possible that Obama ruled. I don't regret using Obamification at all for the thumbnail. It seems very possible that Obama world views Mr. Mamdani differently, not as a threat or a liability, but as a promising figure in the Democratic Party with a pressing need for fresh blood. Oh, absolutely. This is AOC 2.0 for sure. Without question, that's what they're aiming for. I mean, and this is what liberals do, is like, how do we get these, tokens, these compradors in position of power while being able to control them while they're playing the role? And especially because, look, both Alejandro Ocasio-Cortez and Zohran, and Obama included, are attractive people. Like they are aesthetically pleasing to look at. We can't deny that. They're attractive people. All three of them have amazing smiles. Like they just light up a room. And they use that to normalize some of the worst fucking things in Obama's case, to commit some of the worst fucking atrocities. And maybe it's because, I'm a misogynist, anti-white, but like Hillary never had that warm smile. It was very forced. It was very, it's very, they threw you back a little bit. D-Lock between Mamdani and AOC. I think we can fully put the incrementalist argument to bed. The system is not built to create liberty, no matter who's running it. Oh, absolutely. But it won't. Literally, like this is what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter what AOC, what Mamdani do, and what they don't do. Those people that are still supporting the Democratic Party are soulless fucking creatures. There's one thing if you're apolitical. There's one thing if you're an uneducated voter and you're just like, look, I'm gonna vote Democrat. That's what I've always done. That's what I'm gonna continue to do because everything I've seen from the Republicans is awful. That is understandable. But if you're somebody that is politically engaged, and especially if you're a political commentator like Sam Cedar, like Emma Vigeland, like Hassan Piker, and you're still normalizing voting for the Democratic Party, in fact, you're not opposing them, you're aiding and abetting the normalization of genocide as long as Blue does it, as long as D does it, as long as the Democrats do it. And, you have blood in your hands. And I don't say that lightly. A spokeswoman for Mr. Obama declined to comment. Mr. Obama governed as a liberal centrist, and the party's left flank has grown increasingly progressive since he left office. So too has frustration among some voters with Mr. Obama's post-presidency, in which he has, in general, kept public statements on politics to a minimum, even as the Democratic Party struggles to organize opposition to Mr. Trump. Well, he does it because the Dems are fucking losers. He does it because he's losers. And he doesn't want to get the stench of loser on him. Obama's all about optics. So he's like, I don't want to be associated with you guys. You guys lost. Right? I'm a fucking winner. Look at me. I'm doing fucking shows on Netflix. I'm doing shows with Bruce Springsteen. Like all these things, he wants to always be perceived as successful. He wants to maintain that aura. Despite this, Mr. Obama remains among the most popular figures within the Democratic Party in a generation. If Mr. Mamdani does ultimately receive public support from the former president, it is likely to help, especially with some older voters and black voters. It may also ease the path for other Democrats to accept, if not celebrate, his emerging role in the party. I mean, they can't fully embrace him either way, whether they want to or not, because it's basically gonna spoil his role in the Democratic Party. to be the radical. Mr. Obama, if he chooses to do so, could also play an important role by making clear that the intense focus on affordability Mr. Mamdani has championed is not only the purview of the party's left, but should and animate the party's politics at a moment in which inequality is destabilizing people's lives and their beliefs in American democracy. Bro, let me cause a problem. Let me cause a problem by forcing so many people to foreclose and siding with the banks, and then we want to pretend that we understand and we're sympathetic to income inequality and affordability of housing. That's fucking great. That's fucking great. Reached for comment about the call, Mr. Mamdani's communication director, Jeffrey Lerner, who worked in the Obama White House. Okay, can we just stop? Can we just fucking stop? Can we stop? It's just, oh no, these fucking liberals are gonna continue this. It's gonna be so unbearable. It's gonna be non-fucking stop. Oh man, the first fucking city-run bodega he opens, it's gonna be so fucking unbearable to deal with. Mind you, he's surrounding himself with the same people that fooled you with Obama, and now now we want to pretend that this is like, oh my god, that there's any hope for this motherfucker, man. Wow. Drew a comparison between the two men. I mean, if somebody that worked with Obama is comparing them, that's a red flag. Much like my former boss. Just like the old boss. All right. Zohran embodies thoughtful leadership, moral courage, and a unique ability to inspire hope in those who've been left behind by politics as usual. You know, everybody was giving a lot of heat to Anna Kasparian, the Armenian sellout, because she said something along the lines that Obama gave us Trump or led us to Trump. And a lot of people were like, how dare you, this and that. And I was just like, bro, like, even I understand that what she meant is because Obama failed to live up to the hope that he promised. Because of that, people completely turned and be like, well, fuck that. Right? And sure, like, racism was heavily involved in that. But a lot of if you look at the map of Obama's like victory, so much of the heartland, so much of what is like Trump country now went to him. I shouldn't say so much, a good amount. I don't want to exaggerate. Went to Obama. Like, Obama was fucking loved. He was loved. And you know, the downfall, not just think about it like this. It was through Obama's administration that Hillary was able to legitimize herself to voters to run for the presidency. And it was through the Pied Piper strategy that Trump was able to be legitimized by the media and pushed forward by Hillary and her team and the Democratic Party entirely, because he thought it was going to be an easy dub. And then we got Donald Trump. And it was through Obama stepping in. And look, this is politics. I'm not saying it was like illegal or corrupt. No, it was politics. It's a dirty trick, but that's what politics is. By Obama coming out and gathering everyone to support Joe Biden to bring an end to the National Socialist Bernie Sanders, the lifelong lover, Zionist of Golda Meir, Bernie himself, the old Bernie, like to bring a stop to his ascendance. Obama did that, resulting in Joe Biden winning his first election and then trying to force himself to re-election, eventually getting kicked out by the party. But it was because of Joe Biden's like corpse out there that essentially Trump was handed an easy dub, because Kamala would have not been, I don't think she would have won a primary. Maybe, but I don't think so. And even if she did, she would at least would have had more time to gather herself, to compose herself, to sell herself to the American population as a viable candidate, which I don't think was ever going to happen. But it was through Obama's meddling and through his actions that we got Obama. I mean, excuse me, we got Trump the first time, and then we got him again. We cannot separate these figures, and I think that's why he's playing such a recluse role. It only comes out when absolutely necessary or when it affects him personally. But in many ways, Trump should be the legacy of Obama. And a lot of people were like purposely misinterpreting what Anna Kasparian was trying to say, but I also think that she's always been a poor communicator. Deadlock, the way the great man Mamdani makes me think he's going to be so much worse than we think. No, no, no. I think just because of the position that he's going to be occupying, it won't be that bad. It really won't. Um, but I think he's going to be used to help like whitewash a lot of other political figures. That's my kind of prediction is what he's going to be used for. But we'll see. We'll see how the capitalists in New York treat him or how they want to go about it. Though it has been nearly 2 decades since Mr. Obama's 2008 victory, the parallels between the two charismatic Democrats are unmistakable. Both are political outsiders with unconventional biographies. Right, okay, they're still pushing that political outsider bullshit. Okay. Mr. Obama was the country's first black president. Mr. Mamdani, if elected in November, would be the first Muslim to govern New York City. Oh my gosh. It's going to be so beautiful when that happens. Oh, I'm fighting back tears. Oh, it's going to be such a victory for the Muslim community. Muslims are no longer going to be targeted both nationally and internationally. TSA is just going to be so kind to Muslim people moving forward. It's just, I'm getting just an overwhelmed sense of emotions and just gratitude for representation. There's nothing more beautiful and, in fact, more revolutionary than brown faces in high places. That's how you know we've made it. Martin had a dream. What the fuck is wrong with these people, bro? What is wrong with them? Wow. Both built campaigns around grassroots organizing and formed diverse, multiracial coalitions that galvanized young Americans and attracted voters far beyond party's traditional base. Yes, what you're doing is making sure that the next generation becomes jaded again. And unfortunately, more often than not, they become apolitical. And then you have some that become even like more hardcore, like, no, I could do a better job for the Democratic Party. And it's like, bro, okay, sure, maybe you're the one that we need up front and center. Mr. Axelrod said he found the reaction of much of New York's political establishment dispiriting and outdated. Scare the hell out of people, and maybe we can get them to vote for our deficient politics. Excuse me. Okay, scare the hell out of people, and maybe we can get them to vote for our deficient politics. He said, describing the approach with brutal efficiency. Why use deficient and efficiency back to back there? I can't write for shit, but I'm just wondering. That's not a politics that I want to be associated with. That's a politics. Sorry. These fucking bastards are so shameless. That's not a politics I want to be associated with. That's not a politics I think prevails. Well, I mean, there you have it. Also, I do think that it's and I did it on purpose. I'll tell you why I did it. I do think it's always a little racist when they paint when they make sure that not paint, but when they always like photograph or portray non-white figures in black and white. There's no reason for this. There's no reason for this. In fact, I would have excused it if the background was colored, but there's no reason to put them in black and white. I do think that it's part of like that not blancamiento, but like whitening of a person, like to make them more approachable, more accessible to white people. I think that's what it is. And it's gross. Now, I did it for my thumbnail for Obama because I wanted to demonstrate him almost like a ghost of Christmas past, like almost like a specter over Mamdani, over the Democratic Party, over the American people. Taylor, truly, it's scary you're playing it up, but I see many people constantly saying that slogan. They also use his religion like it was his ethnicity, which is strange. Yeah, I mean that's almost unavoidable with, yeah. But man, this is something else. That is something else. And I just want y'all to remember when Obama decides to get involved, it's always to help the capitalist class. Look at this. Y'all forgot about this or what?
After a multi-day protest prompted by the shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin. And
again, prompted by the shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin.
We've learned former President Obama provided counsel to Players Union President Chris Paul as well as LeBron James on Wednesday night. Here's how Paul explained the athlete's decision to resume play.
We understand how strong our voice is, how powerful our voice is, and ultimately we decided if we go away from this stage, we don't necessarily have that same platform.
Let's talk more about all of this with ESPN host.
Fucking disgusting. I'm not even gonna hear. Should we? I mean, he got into politics recently, so it'd be interesting, I guess, because this was 4 years ago. All right.
Stephen A. Smith, good to see you.
Good to see you, Anna. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the time. I know how busy it's been for you in your world. What more do you know about former President Obama's involvement in the discussions?
Well, obviously, he has an incredibly close relationship with the president of the Players Association for the NBA. That would be Mr. Chris Paul, also known as CP3. They have a very close relationship. He obviously has...
I don't know why he's doing this. And he would be. It's like, yeah, we just we just saw him speak. That's who we're talking about.
Very good relationship with LeBron James as well. And so in the aftermath of Milwaukee doing what they did, electing not to play their playoff game against the Orlando Magic, and it creating the brouhaha that it did.
Brouhaha. This is dismissive language. Brouhaha. All right.
Ultimately, guys leaned on former President Obama to just come and intervene and to just give some advice and some counsel on what they were doing, how effective they were doing it, and what were some of the things that they could do to capitalize on this moment that we're living in right now.
What? Shut up and dribble? Is that what Obama told him? But like in a liberal way? No. It's like you don't want to boycott or protest or go on a strike. What you want to do is keep dribbling.
So beyond that conversation with President Obama, take us inside the other discussions that were happening within these meetings over how to proceed. What more do you know about LeBron James' involvement as the biggest name in the league?
Well, first of all, he is the biggest name in the league, obviously the biggest name in sports. He was a bit perturbed because when the Milwaukee Bucks elected not to play and was willing to forfeit its playoff game against the Orlando Magic, they hadn't really told anybody. So LeBron didn't like.
Oh, shit. You got to check in with the king. You got to check in with King James. I mean, I can see his frustration. Again, this was 4 years ago. His frustration being like, damn, now you put the pressure on the rest of us. You showed actual solidarity. And now you're going to demonstrate, you're going to help everyone see that we're fucking cowards.
Like the fact that they had basically made a unilateral decision and ultimately.
They're like, we were doing this performative shit. That was fine enough. That was more than enough. Why are you guys going to actually like make us take some action?
To follow them.
Can you imagine just the piggy bank that these guys have in terms of their union if they go on strike? I can't even begin to imagine the commas and the zeros involved in that shit.
He had a desire not to or anything like that. It's just that a heads up would have been nice. That was the mentality. Then they go into a meeting Wednesday evening at about 8 p.m. Eastern time, and there was some back and forth exchanges between him and various players, particularly the young guys that took issue with how he was communicating with them. What specifically he was saying, we don't know, but they took issue with how he was talking to them at that particular moment in time. He ultimately stormed out of the meeting. If you recall, the 11.
Yep. He was trying to sell out completely, and the younger players were like, bro, like, what are you doing? The younger players that were closer to this, right? And H has a lot to do with this. I don't know when they're going to get into the Obama part, which is kind of annoying me. And they don't have a transcript here. I'm going to jump a little bit. Apologies.
Teams that are pretty good, you know I'm good. But 15 minutes speaking the way that he spoke, and that ultimately riled some folks up, athletes, and a great.
Austin being
so.
I don't have to get the sense. I know for a fact in America, you walk to work every day with it. I feel sorry for LeBron James and advertisers and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I was hoping they were going to do more coverage on Obama. Let me do this. Oh, he did details of himself. Wow. Like he's bragging about this. Appearing as a guest on LeBron James' barbershop themed talk show, The Shop, which aired Friday on HBO, Obama described the discussion that unfolded hours after the Milwaukee Bucks wildcat strike in response to the police shooting of Jacob Blake. A wildcat strike is basically like LeBron was crying about earlier. You're not coordinating with the rest of your union members. You're not asking for approval. You just do it. Which can be risky at times, but again, with the amount of money that their union has for a strike, it's just, if anything, upsetting to sponsors or demonstrating to the whole world just what spineless performative hacks these people are. Those unwilling to go on strike. In response to the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin, put the league's bubble in jeopardy. Quote, I think it was close to midnight when Chris CP calls with LeBron. Carmelo Anthony, I think Russ Westbrook was on the phone, and the conversation we had was along the lines LeBron spoke about. Obama said of the call that sources said also included Miami Heat forward Andre Iguodala. Protest is useful in terms of raising awareness, but giving the power that the NBA players had, my suggestion was that we use the platform to see if you can start asking for some specifics. This isn't something that's just a one-off. That's sadly what we've seen as it happens again and again. So one of my suggestions I had for the players was, is it possible for you guys to set up an office that allows you on an ongoing basis to take best practices that are going to start making incidents like this, Blake, less likely? James said that in the moments before speaking to Obama, as the Los Angeles Lakers were in the middle of a first-round playoff series with the Portland Trailblazers in a run that would eventually earn LA its 17th championship. Interesting. And James's fourth ring and fourth NBA Final MVP distinction. Interesting. He was prepared to abandon the season. He was not. I mean, okay, let's say he was. Let's be charitable. Let's say LeBron James was willing, able, and ready to abandon the season. It only makes Obama's interference look worse. Now, why am I being like petty and bringing this back up? Why didn't I focus on the way that they did Bernie Sanders design as himself dirty? It's because, one, everybody always cries about that moment when it, quite frankly, was just politics. It wasn't like the Hillary debacle where the DNC was handing Hillary Clinton, the questions before the event. And some people like Destiny, who should be on the sex offender registry, try to diminish that by saying, oh, you don't know what the questions are going to be? They're obviously going to be all the same generic questions. Sure, but the wording matters and the order matters, and being prepared for them just helps anybody in any debate. That reassurance. If it didn't, why didn't they give it to Bernie? That is legitimate, and there was legitimate cheating going on and some things that are, I think, quite frankly, illegal. However, what happened to Bernie the second time around, thanks to Obama? I don't think that was just politics. That was just politics working itself out. That's all it was. Promises were made, behind closed doors, but it was just politics. And Bernie for being the amendment king when it comes to the big stage, it's not that great at politicking. But so the reason why I'm bringing this one up specifically is just to highlight that Obama is all about, he's a narcissist. It's all about self-serving shit, right? How is this going to benefit? Obama wants to watch the rest of the fucking season play. You know, I think that's how shallow it is. Yo, you're ruining my basketball season. I want to watch the game. Without a doubt, he has a fantasy league with a bunch of war criminals. No question about it. And so he's like, you don't want to ruin it, you know? But I think that it shows that, like, even the hint of the black community coming together, it's celebrities, I should say, to support the black community and actually hitting them where it hurts in their pockets, right? Because we're talking about sponsorships, we're talking about broadcasting, we're talking about so many things across the board. Not to mention the attention it was going to bring to the police brutality that the black community faces. They had to bring a stop to that immediately. And so what I'm getting at is, if you think that Obama calling Zohran Mamdani is harmless, if you think Obama's people surrounding Zohran Mamdani is harmless, I would argue that an NBA strike, calling them and telling them, hey, build an office, do something else, can also be perceived as harmless. But they don't view it as harmless. They view this as a domino effect. And like, how do we stop that from spiraling out of control? And truly having people both be willing to push back against police brutality in this case, or to organize around actual leftist candidates. You're not going to find them in the Democratic Party. You're not going to find them in the Democratic Party. You're not going to find them in the Democratic Party that covered for and normalized genocide. Did Obama make a call to Biden to bring this to a stop? No. That didn't go down like that. But again, it's the pettiness and how small something like this can be perceived, although I think it would have had great effect if it would have been carried out, that I want to highlight. That's why I chose to read up a little bit on that. And I thought that video was going to have more to say on exactly Obama's role in it. My apologies there. But I'm glad we found that article describing kind of the bragging of it, right? In your face. But they do it in such a smooth way that you just take it. You just take it. But he's bragging about ending a strike in support of the black community, in opposition to police brutality. That is Obama. That is his legacy. And Mamdani wants to take up that mantle. Thank you all. Subscribe, hit the like if you can, leave a comment. I appreciate y'all greatly. Yes, do.